Greetings, Ravens. Welcome to the Ravens Roundtable. This is an Armored Core podcast. We talk about Armored Core here. We try to be a little more nuanced in our discussion, do a little deep dive. There's plenty of deep dive in with Armored Core. It's not as simple or as basic as some people make it out to be, obviously, because it's a very deep and very complex game, but a very rich history. So I posed a question about what is Armored Core, and I have some guests here to help me answer that question. So without further ado, let me introduce them to you. So I'm myself and Cleric. If you're on this channel, you pretty much know who I am. Along with there also is on the far right of my Discord screen, we have the man who oozes with charisma as proven by the PvP showcase. He also happens to be my in real life best friend who I've known for years and years and years, and also a fellow OG Raven. We have Zealous with us. Hi, Zealous.
Hey everybody, how you doing? And Cleric, I gotta throw something back at you, man. My soon-to-be best man. It's fantastic to be here. Thanks for having us back. Just really psyched to get a chance to discuss this, dive in a bit more core theory and what AC's all about.
Thank you. All right, and right next to him on my screen, I have a man who is literally the manifestation of a prophecy that we joked about in the Midwest Armored community for years. We said there was going to be a man somewhere who loves this game that no one knows about, who's going to come out of nowhere and start wrecking people in tournaments. This is that person. He really did do that back during Last Raven. It's Foxfire Caterpillar. Hey, Foxfire, how you doing?
Outstanding. Greetings all. Glad to be here. Armored Core is love.
I couldn't have said it better. Armored Core is love. All right, and last but certainly not least, we have a man who loved Overboost so much he joined a gang that's all about Overboost. So with that being the case, he's also been recently getting in the Armored Core 16, making some YouTube videos, doing a lot of ranked. It's been a lot of fun to watch some of this content come up. And so without further ado, I also have BooYaka. How you doing, Yaka?
What's up, Cleric? I hope you come back to the Grammaton sometime soon, bro.
Oh, Grammaton's around-ish. He's just the wheelchair variety right now. I mean, that's what he is. He's there. It's I don't know what it is. I fell in love with the wheelchair so early on, and even though it's been nerfed like 5 times, I still love the thing. I just can't help it.
It's Grammaton Retirement Edition.
Yeah, sort of. It'll come back eventually. We'll get there. All right. Anyways, so as I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, I asked a question in the YouTube video. This kind of came about, for those who haven't seen it, I'll put a link in the description to Striker 505's video, talking about with Armored Core 6 as far as what people think it did right, what people think it did wrong, and also what do you think the biggest improvement could have been. And it got me thinking a lot about this conversation because we listened to the video is long, it's almost 3 hours. And it talks to all kinds of people and asking those 3 questions. It got me kind of thinking because between this, and I'm sure you've all seen this to a point, whenever a new Armored Core game comes out, there's always the early adopters. There's those who go, oh, this game sucks. This isn't really Armored Core anymore. You know, there's always that almost that knee-jerk reaction to the series. It's kind of been, when we went from 3rd gen to 4th gen, I remember a lot of people were like, oh, what is this? What is 4th gen? And then we went 4th gen to 5th gen. Everyone's like, 5th gen's too slow. And then we got to 6th gen. I was like, this is too Sekiro-like. So I wanted to pose the question. I got a lot of responses. There's a ton of comments on this video. But I wanted to bring some people on that I've known who played a variety of the games throughout the years. Not just 1 or 2, but a variety of the games throughout the years. That kind of have a more complete perspective over said years about what they feel about Armored Core is. So I started the introductions with Zealous, so and I ended with BooYaka here. So BooYaka, I'm going to start with you. So let me ask you the question. All right, Boo. What is Armored Core to you?
You know, Armored Core to me is like, it's basically like the best robot mech fighting game that you can play at any during time in any console or gaming system or whatever at the time. The only requirements for it to be Armored Core, you got to have arms, legs, head, and core. The legs have to be quad, bipedal, reverse joint, and tanks. Besides that, I've played like 7 different Armored Cores. Everything else changes. None of that other stuff really matters. That is Armored Core. The leg types, pretty much, yeah.
Interesting. And actually a topic I plan on bringing up someday on the podcast is I was going to make a joke video for maybe April Fool's one year about what really divides the Armored Core community and make it like all dramatic looking, and it'd really be like, and it's always been leg types. That's kind of what it came down to for most people. That's how it was like. That was the clearest distinction. A lot of like the old forum groups was what.
Yeah,
leg
people
types
would even
they
group
used.
themselves
Yep.
together and stuff like that. It was
Oh
great.
yeah.
Every generation says, "Come fight me, bro," and Armored Core 5 still hasn't found the location. They're still scanning for it. Where's this supposed to take place?
Yep. All right, cool. All right. Yep. I'll put a note down here about mech fighting game. We'll talk more about that later. You're not the only person who kind of mentioned that a little bit. So thank you for that. All right, Fox, we'll go to you. What is Armored Core to you?
Little hard to be short. I divided my thoughts into motif, mechanics, and some of the themes that reoccur. The motif is generally consistent. I played Armored Core from AC1 until now, and you're generally a lone nobody, a mercenary, in a backdrop of shadowy puppet masters, and it's a game you fight to upset the order. Okay, that's the motif. Mechanically, of course, you're piloting a customized avatar out of a catalog of about 200 parts that change the performance of your avatar drastically. It's a mech game in that your control is abstracted a bit too, like with the FCS. So it's a mech game where you are a lone mercenary in a world run by a bunch of shadowy puppet masters and you upset the apple cart, so to speak. I guess that's as close as I could kind of summarize it.
No, I get it. No, it makes sense. Yeah, another through thread I saw a lot of places was kind of the mercenary lifestyle.
Yeah,
Was a big, obviously we've always been mercs. That's kind of what we've always been.
you're free in the game essentially. You're not loyal to any of the parties, so you can drastically change the story.
Another topic I'm going to bring up later too, talking a little bit about being freedom. All right, so thanks, Fox. All right, last but not least on this end, of course, is you, Zealous. What is Armored Core to you?
I was really amped when you were telling us the general topic for this, and I tried to toss this one around a little bit until I could get it condensed, kind of turned into a Kellogg cereal box, just something deliverable. And I think one of the most reasonable things that I was able to come up with, someone who's been loving just AC since the PS1 era, is I find Armored Core is the most customizable mecha combat sim out there. Full stop. Many have tried, many have succeeded in certain areas, but never with the kind of blanket, just multitude of ability that AC's been able to bring to the table and what it's encompassed. I know, like Daemon X Machina, you had some of the devs from AC, who'd worked on that, and there are elements that they brought forward, but not the whole general formula that AC's been able to capture. I think the soul of AC, we've been talking about frame and leg parts, I think that's really dead on and ultimately what you come up with, but the soul of that is not just your frame design, but your expression you're able to bring to the table through that. Through customizing a build and through doing a build of your own decor, whether it comes down to leg types or what weapons you like, you're able to put your own spin on how you're going to interact in this world. So if you're big on PvP, whether you're going through story mode, that idea, I love it, Foxfire is pointing that too, of upsetting the balance, you're able to do that in your own way, and there's few games that I've ever seen that have been able to bring that level of customization, and it just bleeds through every part of it, in the story, in PvP gameplay, down to the leg type you choose, down to the kind of silhouette your AC cuts, and that it's that element of personal freedom that's just crazy good.
Cool, awesome, yep. So a lot of the topics were cut on. So looking at I went through and I browsed through the different comments I had here on this topic. And one came up a lot. So let me kind of give you where I'm coming from a little bit on this. So to give you what I think is the quote unquote correct answer, which there's not really one, but I'm gonna say that's what I'm saying, quote unquote. And then there's my answer. So the quote unquote correct answer is Armored Core is whatever From Software decides it is. Like that's as many changes as it's gone through. I give that caveat and that quote unquote answer just because I don't like the phrase "this isn't Armored Core anymore." I've seen it. This isn't new to Armored Core 6. It was said during 5th gen. It was said during 4th gen. Gosh, man, even 3rd gen. When they gave dual analog sticks as an option instead of tank controls, there were some people who were livid that dual analog was an option. So, to give the caveat answer, like I said, I think it's whatever From says. But my personal opinion is this. I actually had a little bit of a struggle Because I actually, when I think about Armored Core, the first thing I don't think of is story. I don't think of mission structure. I don't think of being a Raven per se. I don't think of like it's always a post-apocalyptic place. It's always horrible.
Yeah, it's terrible.
It's always something terrible is always happening in all these missions. It's just generally how it works. I mean, for Pete's sake, you have massive weapons that can destroy an entire planet. So at that point, you kind of have problems. It really comes down to, I can almost define it down to one word, in my opinion. To me, Armored Core is the garage.
Yeah.
The garage.
I completely agree.
The garage to me is Armored Core. I know that sounds weird because that precludes the combat, because the garage is to get to the combat piece. But to me, Armored Core is the garage. I have probably spent of my thousands of hours over my lifetime playing Armored Core games, I guarantee 70% of that has been in the garage.
Yeah.
Easy. Because that's just what you do. You
must have played AC2 then, man.
Oh yeah, you scrutinize every choice and part and energy optimization and getting that next point of defense to get the next tick over for the defensive change, and the energy get to certain points so you have the right amount of recharge, the right amount of heat. I mean, it's a numbers game, and you just spend so much time in the garage, and that's what you do. Now, the secondary piece obviously is combat. It's not an arcade style combat game. It's very much more mecha sim. It's never been kind of like, run and gun per se. You do run and gun in it, but it's not free flowing in that sense. It is, it's somewhat stiff on purpose. It's purposely a little bit stiff. It's not a lack of design or mechanics. It's a design choice on purpose to give you the feel of piloting that mech. That's the whole point. But to me, like I said, Armored Core is the garage. When I think of it, that is where my brain goes, is me being in the garage, hearing the garage music for like 13 million hours on loop while I change a million parts and look at them. So, that being said, the number one thing out of all the different comments I saw 18 different times throughout the comment section is customization. Everyone, for the most part, can agree. I can't think of a game that essentially isn't an RPG that has this level of customization for what you play with. Like this, the nuance, the individual parts, the tuning, the option, it's just like, holy cow, the customization in this game. I mean, I remember that I'm not trying not to spoil my project. I almost spoiled it just now. That was bad.
Careful.
When I was researching the original games, like one of the selling points they had was like, over 3 million customizable options. We're talking about EC1.
Yep.
Over 3 million customization possibilities. Like, dude, this is PS1. This is 1997. This is 8 megabyte memory cards. You're talking about 3 million customization options? Are you kidding? So, yeah. So customization, that part particularly. Would you all kind of agree that that's like the pinnacle of Armored Core, kind of going back to the garage thing, is the amount of options?
If you were to
100%.
If you were to condense it into a single word, yes. Definitely.
And then AC2 music was the best garage music.
Hey man, high five. You know what? To this day, if I'm designing like a PC or if I'm upgrading, I still put the AC2 theme on. It's just
it's too upbeat. It's so fire, dude. I love it.
I miss it. Oh man.
Oh wow. Yep. Go ahead.
I was going to try to. I would say yes. The garage is definitely the selling point, and is certainly what makes Armored Core distinct. It is one half of two halves, though. The other half being the general setting and the story. You don't think about missions, but the game does have a lot of background storytelling, and the missions give you a premise for this that just sort of abstracts the whole process. You're piloting a machine, you're freelance, but you start learning about the world while you're doing work, while you're essentially testing your AC, which is what missions are. Once you're done at the garage, now you get to go test it. But the other half of Armored Core, I think, has been, heck, I might even say instead of garage, the word is freedom. Because you're not just free to make an entirely different performing machine than the next guy, but also your protagonist is always someone who cuts himself from the system and upturns it. You know, even in Armored Core 6, you had Handler Walter. Well, it wasn't too well. It was long, but eventually the ties were severed from that. In the first one, you eventually decide things aren't working. You go destroy the machine that's controlling everything. It's like, what's going to happen now? I don't know, but you're dead. Just,
I like that. Well, the freedom thing kind of went off my head because the reason I mentioned Garage early on is Garage is not just design part, and I get to the second part of it. It also is player expression of how you play the game. Like
Yep.
you don't have to play the game the same way as 1,000 other people. You can play the game completely differently.
That's exactly.
And there's not necessarily a right or wrong way to do it. So yeah, you might be right, Fox. That might be a better word. The better word actually might be freedom. That actually is a good point. I like that.
yes. Well,
I told you
again,
soliloquy is over here. I told you that this person can write. Should be writing books, Fox. I'm being serious.
yeah, no,
you should be.
I kind of agree. I don't talk very well. I say in about 30 words what others manage to convey in 3. So if you're able to mute me, have your thumb on that button.
Oh no, I'm not gonna do that to you. I wouldn't do that. So, no, go ahead.
Oh well, mechanically though, your control is abstracted in this game. That's another very significant key part, because you can have a lot of customization in other games. Monster Hunter comes to mind. I've never played any of those, but every time I look at some video, someone's just completely dressed out, and there's like 16 different approaches to it or whatnot. But you press the button and something happens. In Armored Core, you actually have to learn to position your targets where your mech sees it, and then give your mech its required amount of time to aim properly, and then see if the target hasn't done something silly to break that lock, and then you press the fire button. And it happens in a short amount of time, but it gives you a very strong feeling of piloting a machine rather than being the machine.
Correct.
Yeah. Just like the funnest part of AC games, like in general. Like the whole dodge, guess, wait, like mechanic of every game. Every game has
Or
that.
pre-dodge, because that was huge, especially in the earlier games. And by the way, it's just as huge in 6. The people, I actually think people who played the older games and came into this one after playing previous ones actually had a huge leg up to the new players, because we're in the habit. You've been locked onto. You've seen that Zealous here giving me PTSD with a grenade launcher. You can tell when that quad is sliding on the ground with that grenade launcher, and he's holding his hand on the grenade launcher. Great, you know what's coming, and so you're twitching. You're pre-juking, hoping that thing doesn't just blast you in the face and start melting your AP off. So we're used to pre-dodging in a sense already, and predictably moving to get out of lock. And I think a lot of people are so used to the indicators, or like, oh, he's going to attack, I need to dodge now. I think that's why a lot of people are struggling in the PvP or even in the PvE scene. Yes. I've seen some people playing the games and the missions where they're not pre-moving, and because they're not pre-moving, it's hurting them. And I think that's a big part of why there's some skill gap with some players right now, both in the PvE and PvP scenes, because they aren't used to that level of it's been ingrained to us for hours to predictably move.
Armored Core 6 in particular, I think, has been the most premeditated Armored Core. You have to set things up before they actually hit. I love the Kurosawa so much, and my strategy's a hit and fade kind of style. And when I line up a shot for the Kurosawa, I have to decide, is this going to stun them? And if so, then immediately follow through before I can even tell if it did hit them. I can easily understand that frustration.
In AC6 the combos are crazy, bro. Like I do like some 7K AP combos, and I just laugh my head off because I'm like, this was not happening before.
That bit me out of shape when I moved into Armored Core 6. Was just the ACS overload. That is a significant change. Oh my God, it isn't an Armored Core anymore. We've got the stun mechanic. It's a fighting game now with mechs, but it still holds true to the Armored Core of customization and bucking the system as a lone outsider.
So let me ask you all this question. So me, I'll answer it quickly. So when I got to, so Zealous was there with me. We got to do the preview event. It's been a year, by the way, since the preview event almost.
Congratulations, still.
Yeah,
Holy cow.
it's been
Thank
almost
you.
a year since then. With that, I got serious third gen vibes from this game.
Oh yeah, bro.
Yeah.
Serious third gen vibes, not just the art style, but the art style and something, but also how the game feels, because I think they slowed it down quite a bit from what the direction had been heading for a little while. Do you all kind of agree that this is the most third gen kind of AC we've had since actual third gen?
Maybe.
I personally consider AC6 to just be LR2. Like,
well,
story wise, choosing your missions wise, busted ass guns wise. Like, I really see it that way.
I can easily see how you would say that, Cleric. In my mind, it was a review of all the previous Armored Cores. Because we had quick boosting from 4. We had near permaflight capability from 4, but they slowed it down so that the bandwidth could handle it. They parsed the quick boost so that they'd only be used for dodging, not for teleporting across the field like a Saiyan.
We're not gonna talk about that. That was bad timing.
Yeah. 5 seemed to be the slowest for me. I don't know. I was not in a player versus player scene for 3, so 3 seemed a lot faster to me than Armored Core 5. Armored Core 5 was the slowest.
I think it's because the way the mechanics and the visual art style works. I think it's what it is. I think you really do move a fair bit faster in 5th gen. If you've seen some 5th gen movement, you can do some really funky stuff in 5th gen. Like, if you've seen, like, I'll have to send it to you later if I don't find it, the clips of people doing the crazy, like, the 720 twitch dodging. Have you seen that clip, Fox?
No.
Where there's a guy on the screen and he's moving like this on the screen in the midair. It looks like he's having a seizure in the air. Is how the AC is moving.
Now, see, if I saw that, I'd be calling my ISP.
Yes, but no, that wasn't a network issue. That he's doing that on purpose.
Okay.
So if I find that clip later, I'll send it to you.
Please do.
Yeah, but there's you can do some crazy stuff in 5th gen. But so Zealous, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm really been turning that around in my head. The concept of 6 being the most third gen Armored Core we've had since third gen, and I kind of divide that up because even third gen itself you had eras of that. You had the vanilla 3 and then SL, which especially SL has the most energy freedom I think that we've seen for the PS2 era. And then things divided a little bit. We got the new heat mechanics come Nexus that eased up a bit in Ninebreaker, and then by Last Raven we achieved a really cool balance, and we had part breaking come in. So looking at all those, aesthetic wise, I definitely say yes, because there's some arms. I mean, art wise, the Melander series even.
Oh yeah,
that feels.
Oh, come on.
So that's so Armored Core 3. That is right out of vanilla AC3. You've basically got the not the U2 core. I was going to say the not the Orca. So the Gaia. The Gaia core is basically here again. I'm seeing a lot of great repetitions of those designs, so I love that. So aesthetically, yes. But in the same hand, there's so much about 6 that still feels like it's its own thing. I think it's a little more granular for me. I think movement-wise, energy-wise, yeah, because we're following quick boost and a few of the other evolutions we've had for AC Sense. So movement-wise, I think we're closer to 3, but just with the inclusion of the stagger system alone, it feels so different from so many other AC games, and I'm really looking at 6 as it's really its own entity here.
I can appreciate that. Yeah. No, I just from coming from 4th to 5th gen to 6th, I just feel like I kind of agree with Fox's take a little bit too. It's kind of an amalgamation of all the parts into a single sum.
Sure.
It kind of is a little bit of that. So yeah, no, this
if I may.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to interject. I think the ACS overload is almost a Primal Armor Mark II, where before, Primal Armor served as a cushion that would buckle under steady pressure so that you'd get extra damage if you could lay the pressure on them. ACS has that same similar effect, but less armor padding, just a singular moment where your payoff occurs.
I can actually see that, and I'll take that and I'll raise you. It's kind of like Primal Armor version 2 with the severity of Nexus heat mechanic.
Yeah. I see. Like when I get staggered in AC6, it feels a lot like overheated to gen bust. Like I'm like, oh, this is what happened. This is happening all at once now.
It does. And if anything, it feels like a more frequent overheat. Even before the stagger. Of course, sometimes you're gonna have a really high impact hit that just sends your bar flying all the way up. But even before that, when you're seeing it add up, and you see that stagger is right around the corner, that kind of gives you some pause, and that always reminds me of, okay, I'm sitting right in that line. I'm red zoning already. I got to be careful to kind of ride my heat energy out, where it's going, and there's a little bit of a precursory step you take, so there's that scary moment when you realize how close you're getting to.
Yeah, find a wall, hope they don't have orbits.
Yeah.
Here, let me throw out the urchins.
Occasionally.
Boom.
All right, cool. All right, so yeah, customization. I think we're all pretty much on board with that one. That makes a whole lot of sense. We mentioned a little bit about combat. We can go a little further than if you guys want to. I mentioned specifically how it's not arcade combat. It's not at all. It's more sim-like combat in general.
Yeah.
Fox, I think Fox and Yaka, you both kind of hit on that a little bit. We talked a little bit, the pre, basically pre-aiming and like pre-setting up, premeditating, those kind of things to get things set up properly in the game. The funny thing is that's always kind of existed. It's always kind of been the case. I mean, I'm even going back as far as AC1.
Yep.
Like, oh gosh, man, the turn speeds in that game. It was a real struggle, and I actually jokingly, Zealous actually was here watching me play. I think it was Master of the Arena. We were doing that playthrough together, and I actually managed to make a heavy biped AC that didn't fit through the hallway.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
The hit markers or the hit detection of like the blocks on the AC were actually so big, I couldn't walk through the hallway. I had to hop boost over the lip in order to actually get into the hallway. Like, that's how big you were. It's like, geez, I don't get this big in this game. Very swole. But that's the kind of stuff you get in this game. As I kind of making a joke, but I'm making a joke for a good reason. That's the kind of things you get in this game that you don't get in a one-to-one button press to action, like I said, arcade combat simulator versus something that's more mech simulation that's meant to make you feel like you're piloting a mech versus you, like you said, versus being the mech.
That is true with I just completely forgot the Demon Ex Machina.
Yeah,
that one was very much twitch button, press button, get effect, easy to aim. Even Mech Warrior in BattleTech games tends to. There's a little bit of that feeling with torso twisting and opening up the throttle, but pretty much it's just point and shoot, get effect.
True.
Yeah, I think Armored Core has a monopoly on it, honestly. Other games should learn from it if they want to be mech.
Yeah, there's not a lot of other games like Armored Core. Like, I played a lot of other games. Damon's Ex Machina is close to this. Now, there's a lot of misnomer about DXM. No, there wasn't a ton of From Software people who left and went and made Demon Ex Machina. There's actually very few people actually from the other side. But that being said, Yaka, you mentioned earlier like mecha fighting game. I like that.
Yeah,
specifically.
I mean, there was a few things that compared to that at the same time. Like we had, I mean, at least when I played, we're talking PS2 area. I'm old, you guys. I'm old. There was Virtual Lawn.
Yep.
Yeah.
Everybody knows Virtual Lawn. And you're like, oh, they look the same, but this game is not the same, bro.
Not even close.
No.
And that was the beauty of Armored Core. Armored Core was like, if you're going to play this type of AC, it's going to be this game. And if you're going to play against a certain type of AC, it's going to be that game. So it's like, everything you did is like, you premeditated like your build. And then it's like, if I play versus this part, I do this, or I even drop this part, which was so cool. Something you just did not do in other games at all. You never did any of that stuff. And that's what I loved about Armored Core.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say too, if you look at it, like the original, I think Mech Warrior 2. If I'm correct, I think it was Mech Warrior 2. That came out, or maybe it might have been 3 that came out around the same time, and that's kind of when it got pretty popular. And I mean, obviously, we had MechWarrior 1, MechWarrior 2. You had like the Rebels. You had it was a popular series in and of itself.
Yes.
But what you had in this game, I was thinking like someone mentioned the day in my chat, which I'm like, oh, I remember that game was Omega Boost. That game was back at that time frame as well.
Alpha Strike, maybe.
Sure.
Is
Alpha
that
Strike.
what we're thinking of?
I might be thinking of that one too. Yep.
Yeah.
And I like mecha fighting games specifically because that's what you do. Like you're in a robot fighting other robots. I mean, you have biological organisms here and there every once in a while in the series, but for the most part, yeah, you're in a big robot blowing up other robots, most often smaller than you, sometimes about the same size as you, a few times a way bigger than you. Other times, why am I fighting that? That looks like suicide. And it's
okay.
just,
We're inside it now.
yeah, exactly. And so it's when you think of fighting, the reason I'm bringing the fighting game up is I was thinking about controls, and you have your 6-button fighters, your 4-button fighters. Me and Zealous are really big into fighting games. I think Yaka, even you were to a point at one point we're kind of into fighting games.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And you look at AC, there are some standard movement things as far as how the game flows and functions that have always kind of been the same. I would say as far as changes in Armored Core 6 goes, I think one of the single most significant changes that I don't hear talked about an awful lot is the fact that you can fire 4 weapons at once.
Yes.
It's little nuts.
It's awesome, bro.
Like, I'm so used to pressing the
awesome.
square button to switch weapons and shoot. I mean, I realize, in 4, you could fire like arm cannons and your back cannon at the same time. Like, you had options for those kind of things. Same thing with Verdict Day. But the fact that you can fire everything, and obviously there's some restrictions based on what weapons you're using.
Quite a few, actually.
Yeah, it's just like that's the thing that blew me away the most. It's like, wait, hold up. Armored Core already required me to press a whole lot of buttons at once, and now you're gonna make me press even more buttons?
Okay, I think we can add to the list of what defines an Armored Core title. We have Freedom, Garage, Carpal Tunnel.
Yep, there you go.
Definitely claw hand, dude.
Claw
hand.
Oh yeah, the claw grip.
My hands are stuck like this forever. What are you doing to me?
Forever, bro.
But yeah, so thinking about controls though, I mean, do you think? So this I kind of want to talk about this topic because, like, what is Armored Core? I joked earlier about how there were people, and that's not a joke. This has genuinely happened. There were a lot of people who were kind of upset. Maybe I'm saying a lot as a broad term. There were some, and a vocal some, who were annoyed when Nexus came out, and you had dual analog sticks. I, for one, welcomed it early on and was super excited and happy about it. Because, and granted, I had, at that point, years upon years of doing the original controls. I was used to them. I played it a ton. I played in tournaments. Like, I'm used to that control scheme. But, man, when dual analog came, it was just like, it felt like a godsend to me. Because that to me that was one of the single biggest things, me personally, I feel like that control scheme was one of the single biggest things that held it back from the masses. Because it was not that it was overly difficult to learn once you put the time into it, but a lot of people's I'll tell you, I've played with people, remember back then and even now with the runner games, their brain just doesn't work that way. Like their response time and their ability to properly control their AC with the old school control scheme, a lot of people just didn't get it, and even if they tried, they still couldn't get it. And I think it held the game back a fair amount until finally dual analog stick came in. What do you guys think?
I gotta tell you, one of the most frustrating things in any game ever is having in my mind what I want done and not being able to do it. Whether something has removed my ability temporarily, whether something's on cooldown and I didn't account for it, or whether I spilled drink on my keyboard and I can't poke the keys at the moment. So if they can't get the mech to move like they want it to, they don't even get to the part where they're learning the game around them. So I can easily see that burning some people out.
Like,
Yeah. You know, I honestly, as someone who's played from the older games, I thought it was a design choice because I think DualShock 1 came out when Project Phantasma came out. It was around the same time, something like that.
It was around the same time. That is correct.
Yeah, and I was
Yeah.
like, oh, they're not doing it. Like, they want us to, like, drive a tank. They want it to be hard. Like, I was like, okay.
right.
Then AC2 came out, and it's still... I was really surprised when it wasn't AC2. Then AC3 came out, and then Nexus came out. And I was like, thank God. I hate
Finally.
these controls. I hate these controls so much.
It's interesting, man. I almost wonder if it's like just sort of this thing From Software tends to do. You know, I'm thinking of the Soul series, which I never truly got into until Elden Ring, which I had a lot of fun with. But there's a very specific thing about Souls controls, as I like to call them, or you know, you lead into like the early AC games. There's a clunkiness to them, and there's this awkward adjustment where things don't always just feel like they click the way they should. But once you sort of get into it and you start diving in and sort of develop your own play style within it, it makes sense. It reminds me of the early AC games in comparison to like dual analog sticks, and now today, I mean, being able to use a full mouse and keyboard, that's a crazy evolution compared to what we had. But no, definitely. Even some people in my circle, you know, early on when I was in early college or high school, I always say, hey, you dig mecha, you need to check out Armored Core. It's probably the coolest mecha game you can dig and jump into, especially if you like customization and stuff. But the controls got to a lot of them. They said this just feels crazy. How do you do this? Why the heck is strafe up in L1 and R1, and then why am I moving forward and back with up and down, but I'm looking left and right with D-pad left and right? It's a huge adjustment. I don't think I'd ever played another game like that put movement on 3 or 4 separate axes like that. It's crazy.
I have a theory. I think From Software not only likes making challenging games, but they want to challenge you from the moment go. I bet if they didn't... I wouldn't be surprised if they had the time to hand wrap all of their games, the packaging would be difficult to open. It'd be like child-proof locks and maybe even little puzzle boxes to get to your game.
No, it's already hard enough. Don't make it worse.
Man,
No, I agree. When I see a Front Software, or I mean, I used to think they were age tech games. When I used to see an age tech game, I was like, yes, this is going to be hard, and I'm not going to be able to beat this without looking online. Like, that was a fact.
Yeah.
And I want to say part of it's because it to me at least, it never felt that From liked to make its games artificially hard for just the sake of being hard. But I think a quote from in their dev studios at one point, I forget which video this was, or else I'd gladly give you the link to it, Claire. But they've often said that they like to make games that they find interesting, or that would be or fun to play, or that have that sort of puzzle style element to them, or that maybe don't come together like your standard game would, but a game that they enjoy, and they don't have any problem saying, but this isn't in line with the way most shooters would work, or this isn't necessarily in line with the way most action combat games would work. I've actually respected that about the studio. They've always kind of marched to their own tune with that. And even though I was never a really big fan of Souls games, the Elden Ring, I think they've found a really hardcore crowd and success in that. So to me, it's great that they finally be able to go in reverse a little bit, pull some of the people who played Souls and who really got in on the From Software star power in the AC, because it had been that long forgotten Big Brother, and here we are.
11 years.
Yep.
Hard to believe.
So let me ask you this question then. I'll try to stay away from the drama side of things as much as possible. But so since we're in the mechanics and controls kind of discussion here a little bit already. So the AC6, one of the other big changes was the fact that it was 1-to-1 movement control as far as aiming goes, more or less, especially with mouse and keyboard. That it was based on how fast you could flick your mouse, more or less, depending on what your sensitivity was set to, and that's how you would move it. And there's a lot of people, I've seen a lot of places, who said that that Armored Core 6, quote unquote, could be fixed, and one of the ways it could be fixed is by reintroducing turn speed.
I would.
So So
I think we'd lose like the entire player base if we did that. to be honest with you.
I would preface any argument with beware what you wish for. I don't think that now, of course, I haven't played with mouse sensitivity, but I don't see how it plays much of an advantage other than maybe keeping track of where your opponent is at any given time, because you still have to go through the FCS and its own ability to track the enemy to fire. I could be wrong on this, okay? I haven't delved into the technical things, but to me, it seems kind of a trivial advantage for those with the luxury, and one that doesn't really give much of a significant advantage. I would be against going back to turning speed. They'd probably give the wheelchair like the highest turning speed for no reason other than they hate me in particular. And
all right, from bring back turn speed, I'm sold now. Bring it.
I mean, there's no out of area too, so it's like that.
Yeah.
Like, that's also another thing that changed everything in this game.
And versus things. Yep.
Yeah.
Then also you have hard lock too. You have hard lock as an option now, which is way like a lock on. Like holy cow! Now, granted, there actually has been quite a bit of testing done on that now by some people, and there actually is a. It's not noticeable on the, shall we say, not the lower end, but the lower end scale of like matches per se, where there's not high stakes or high skill players. But dude, the high school players, when they do hard lock versus soft lock, how much the FCS gets affected actually is quite a bit more noticeable.
I have a theory on that.
They have some hard numbers now on that, and there actually is a fair bit of difference between soft lock and hard lock, which people would have thought, oh, hard lock's too good. Like, well, actually, if you're a high-end player, soft lock's kind of where it's at for that stuff.
Now this is untested theory of mine, but I've spent the last X many months playing nothing but ready set weapons. I've got the Kurosawa, which is my baby. I follow through with the Majestic, and I've switched out the laser cannons on the back out there. So I'm used to press button to fire, and then there's a delay. And I've come to the belief that arm tracking speed plays into hitting your opponent, but in a seemingly random way based on how you are facing. My theory is thus, okay? The FCS determines where you should aim. The arm speed then determines how quickly your arms will reach the point where it needs to fire and then fire. And if your arm is already pointed where it needs to go, this is pretty close to instantaneous. But if you have to travel a ways to get your arm into position, this could be in just slow enough. This was very apparent to me when piloting a tank, because the tank will torso twist and fire behind itself, and that is a noticeable second and a half between pressing the button to fire and then looking back at the thing. One of the many reasons why I loathe that tank so much. But I think in a sense, hard lock gives a bit of an advantage to the newbies because their arms are already pointing where they need to go. But this is all theory out there.
I'm sure there'll be people who listen to this and will tear into us saying, you guys are completely wrong. This is the reason why. Here's the scientific graph. You know what? That's fine.
Oh, I look forward to that.
It doesn't bother me.
Personally, I play on Steam, you guys. I'm a Steam guy. You probably have never played against me, but pretty much in S rank, everybody's hard lock. I'm like, and I can tell when they're not, because like the game is actually, you play the game differently versus someone who's not hard lock.
Well, I play on Steam too, so it's like I don't
pay me, man. Come on.
Yeah, we should. We actually should. We have I don't pay close enough attention. I can usually tell when someone's hard lock versus soft lock also, but man, if you watch some of the tournament play though, the sign of a high end player is. We're talking people who are doing free aim, like ear shots and free aim charge facades. Not even hard lock or soft lock.
That's just busted though.
They're doing crazy stuff.
Charge Hassan is so scary from across in a game where we've lost so much long range combat, true long range. I mean, gone is the era of like Wyvern, like Nexus Wyvern and stuff like that. Like you see Hassan coming at you at light speed from like 800 away or something. It's like, oh my god, wait, let me make sure I got my dentures in still. Whoa, hold up.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, no. I was just kind of curious what you all thought about the changes with the hard luck versus the hard luck being a thing, and also the change in movement. So yeah, I'm in the same boat. I think bringing back turn speed would alienate too many players. I agree. So
Claire,
you're gonna say something, Zealous? Yeah.
Yeah, real quick. I just want to weigh in on that. I think I'm the only one that didn't fully weigh in on that section about what yay or nay to bring turning speed back. I don't think so, and here's why. I don't think that would be the band-aid to fix it. I'm more for going forward at this point. I think the idea of applying something that we've seen in past gens just sort of retroactively, I'm leery that would fix the entirety of the problem. Potentially, you might have something else that could come up too. One thing AC's been able to do, we've hinted at this, we've been talking about it. I loved watching this series evolve. One thing it's never backstepped on is most major mechanics you see still stick around in some way. Overboost was introduced. It's still here. We've had, it was a little bit different, in 5. By 5, we had was more of like a glide. Here, we've got more of an omnidirectional push, the way you can, not fully omnidirectional, but it's a lot more directional the way you can aim it and the way, your overboost movement goes. That stayed. We've had, when PA shields were introduced, Primal Armor didn't stay in the way that we've known it. Some bosses have had it and things like that, but the defensive mechanics, what you see present in AC today, we've got like the stun mechanics and things like that. AC is always built upon itself. Part dropping is still there, which I love. I'm so happy about that. Hangers are back again. It's not just hangers from like Last Raven, the type of stock system that we had back in AC5 and VD. We're able to like pull another set of hand weapons up. That's really slick. So while we're missing a few old school things like weapon arms and things like that, I'm more for let's go forward. I'm not completely sold that turning speed would be the fix.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, they need to bring back the radar. Like, what the
Good old radar.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. The little thing at the bottom, I still don't like it. I don't.
Mm-hmm.
I like the sonar thing, like submarine fights or what. I don't know what's going on with that, bro.
I like that this seems to be the first Armored Core where missiles actually work, and they actually work because you can lose track of where everyone is. That being said, I think radar could actually work as a back part rather than a head function. Don't make it a head function whatsoever, but make it a dedicated weapon slot that you give up for the radar.
I mean, that was a thing in the older ACs.
I'd be cool with that.
Probably even restrict it to the left shoulder as well, so you choose between shield or radar.
I can see it.
Yeah, I can see it.
I can see it. Cool. All right, controls, mechanics. We talked a little about ACS. I think for the most part, everyone can generally agree ACS is a little too strong of a mechanic. It needs toned down. It's too much. I don't think it's as bad as some people make it out to be. But at the same time, you have to design around it and design against it a little too much. It's a little too. It's kind of like how people approached heat mechanics in Nexus. If you didn't properly address your heat mechanics in Nexus, you were just gonna burn and die in that game. And I think if you don't make the same kind of a proper adjustments for ACS or for stagger in this game, I think you have the same kind of problem. So I don't know what you guys think, but I think in general, I have no direct issue with ACS or stagger mechanic. I just think it's overtuned and needs pulled back some.
I agree wholeheartedly. I think the adjustment I would make is to simply not fix you in place. It would be a
like PA barrier point. Basically.
Yeah, it'd be a vulnerable state where you're taking extra damage, but you can still move because. Well, I tell you, my new alarm sound is ACS overload followed by a pile bunker charging up. You know that I don't know. That's how many
fun right there.
It's like, oh well, it's over.
Game over.
Game over. I love it, man.
I can at least be happy for them though, because I know they lived for it.
That's true.
I mean, there's a lot of ways you could balance it out. I actually like ACS. I know it sounds crazy, but I think it's fun. Like letting people have a time to do a combo. It's just something that wasn't done in Armored Core before. So
it looks slick. I agree.
Yeah,
it definitely looks cool.
The issue is that too many parts. I think all the parts control your stability except for arms, right? So that maybe standardize the stagger. I don't know. I'm just thinking from
Mhm.
like a fighting game like player's perspective. Like sometimes like the stun has to be standardized, otherwise it just feels unfair because you're always just gonna pick the highest stun character.
That's true.
Right.
That's also
Yeah,
why
you
some
Yeah.
parts don't get used for that same reason, because the stagger is just not, the ACS defense is not high enough to justify its use for other benefits you get for it. So yeah, that's what I mean by overtuned. I think it just needs pull
Yeah.
back some to make it not so dominating of a factor in how you design and how you prepare.
Sure, and I'd be all for seeing it, in a follow up to AC6 or whatever that expansion would look like, or if we
Six
had
foil Zenith.
six foil Zenith, right? If we had a follow up to it, just refining
622, bro.
622. I love it. I love it. Just the idea of refining what we have here a little bit and making it not as punishing. I think one line of thought I've seen about ACS is people say, well, it feels bad because you're already, you're taking damage. You see AP loss. That's already a negative in your mind. And then on top of that, you're punished for it with a huge stun in place, and then you're going to get whacked again and again and potentially die from it. So I understand when people say it's frustrating and where it comes from and like the overtuning, but like Yaka said, there's some really fun combos it opens up. In the same hand, it's kind of causing us, I think, as a community, to make adjustments to it. There's a cool tactic, for example, if you do, what is it? You do a kick right before it goes off, instead of just staying hovering in midair, like if you get stunned, you'll float towards the ground. Like things like that, like that's subtle, but throwing off that y-axis can literally be a difference between you being alive and being nuked from what was about to hit you before, because someone's training on you. So I think that's really cool, and that as players, we're starting to take that into our own hands. And I think the more tools we get to do stuff like that, the more fun the game's going to be, which, heck, easing up ACS a little bit could open the door to that. So, I would gladly see it for maybe another AC6, but play it a little bit, see where we can get with it.
Another subtle approach they could do is to just turn down the direct hit modifier on all weapons, like just one broad sweep, back it out. Because again, I think that the frustration is not so much being weak as just sometimes it's the entire match settled in a moment.
Yeah.
Because again, like the pile bunker, if they catch up to you with that, whatever your build is, that's going to be half or more of your hit points in that single strike. And oh my goodness, getting like kick, shotgun, kick, pile bunker, comboed, no.
Well, here's the funny thing.
Funny.
To talk about that, technically, that's always sort of kind of existed in Armored Core. I mean, you that's always kind of existed. Like as far as like you could have got piled. You get the parry blade. You could get parry blade. You get an insta jib. That was possible. I think what makes 6 a little, not that's a little, quite a bit different in that particular stage is how easy it is to one shot someone potentially, has to do with the fact that melee is the best that's ever been in this game.
Yeah.
Like hands down,
it actually tracks, dude. It's insane.
Yeah, it's insane. So I think even though that was always a possibility, you could get one shot, it was just extraordinarily hard to do. Now in this game, if you get staggered right off of a simple shot, that dude's switching to parry blade, charging it up, you're about to get uppercut into space. I mean, that's just what's going to happen in that match. So I think that's where it more comes from, is that it's melee is the best it's ever been, which thank God. Melee has been struggled through the years in a lot of places as far as PvP and other things go. Even PvE to a point, the blade has always kind of been handy, especially like as an energy saver or like an ammo cost saver is really what it was.
Sure.
Let's face it, we use blades because it was an ammo cost saver. That's usually why we use blades. But it's what it gives you in this game is that you have boost canceling as far as like blade canceling goes with like your movement and the crazy strafing you can do because of it. You have blade combo you can do with it, and you with direct hit adjustment, the melee attacks do all kinds of damage and good amount of stagger. The melee is the best that's ever been in Armored Core 6. So I think that's where some of the frustration may come for some people, is because this has always kind of existed, but it's a heck of a lot easier to one-shot people in Armored Core 6 than I think it was before. I think it's probably the easiest it's ever been.
If I may add, I think a little bit more of my own personal frustration is that the stagger does not come from very close range.
Oh.
When you get parry bladed and one-shotted in previous Armored Cores, you're like, yeah, well, he caught up to me. He was able to hug me with death. But here, I don't, you may or may not have seen my angry ramblings about the Javelin missile.
Oh
But
yeah. The
it's
beta.
almost been like a Looney Tunes. I'll be focused on my opponent. I'll duck around a building, and that thing just like ends around the building and heads straight up, right under me. I just so you're getting stunned and set up for being fixed in place at a distance. So there's no real kind of safe unless That's kind of the frustration here. They can fix me in place at a distance and then move in for the kill.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Javelin beta, it's frustrating. There is actually a flight pattern to not get hit by it, but you do have to back off to do the flight pattern. So if you're playing a close range AC, you still lose. So it is very frustrating. But I feel if they do update the game, they could like learn from that mistake and change what it is.
Well,
Like,
I'd look forward to it in a sequel rather than them tweaking it any further in this game, though.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
My guess will either. My guess. I did a video on this a little bit ago talking about because Miyazaki obviously hinted at the fact that there's more Armored Core coming here at some point. What that's going to look like, we don't know exactly. But it could be a 6.5 like we've seen before, like 5.5, 4.5, that kind of thing. It could be, as given their more recent games, it could be a massive DLC drop, kind of like a la Elden Ring or Dark Souls games. Or it could be, you know what? We like what we got with 6. Let's work on number 7. We're going to wait a little longer time than usual and go to number 7. Who knows? But the fact is, the game was successful enough that basically, or at least Kodakawa said so in their earnings meeting, that quarter. Like the game is successful enough to legitimize it, but continuing in the series. So
Awesome.
it's not done. So that's the good part. And Miyazaki really wants to do more, which also is a good thing. So with that being said, with Armored Core going future directions of what is Armored Core, right? Asking that question again. Like, is there anything that the game specifically in your guys' eyes could do? Like, name maybe one or two things that specifically the game could alter, change, add, that would just deepen the experience and improve it in ways that would be, it could be quality of life change, it could be a mechanics change, it could be something that's not existing currently that needs to exist in the game you feel it should be there. Like, what's one or two things you guys would pick?
Well, probably scale of conflict and VR support. The latter being more just kind of a rich man's add-on, but I think
Dude, Armored Core in VR.
Well, maybe controlling it in VR, but I was thinking of just more of the headset viewpoint from within your mech. Looking out from the head of your thing. That's another topic altogether. But when I mean an increase in scope, I mean something similar to the UNAX, but actually flushed out, having conflicts, maybe even mercenary campaigns, where I kind of miss some of Armored Core 5's structure. I like the idea of playing on a team. I actually like the addition of an operator. I thought the game was kind of ahead of its time. And I think Armored Core might be able to go back and look at that and say, how can we turn these mercenary battles into war and still have the player feel like they're making a difference and have control over it? So, that would be the next challenge, is can we get just more on the field happening at once? How about all of the red guns all at once?
I've recently done the Scrap Heap mod where it triples. I played it on triple, so there's triple the enemies. And I tried doing that mission for a while. That mission is wild with triple the enemies. It's crazy.
All the red guns. I love it. All
right, Yaka, what do you think? What's one or two things you either add or change?
I mean, if we're gonna say like the obvious ones, like the game needs to bring back the long range weapons.
You beat me to it.
It's like you have the missiles. Like, why did you take away the long range weapons? Like, they literally accomplished the same goal just in a different way. Kinetic weapons need to be. They need to be a little bit nicer to kinetic weapons, or like, I don't know, make everything else worse. I don't know. Just stuff like that. Missile decoys. I think we said radar already. Like those things are a big deal. But like, do you guys imagine how fun this game would be if we had a missile decoy? You got to fly around it and shoot people with a linear cannon from like 1,000 meters away. It'd be so much fun.
Maybe just remove the effective range stat on the rifles.
Yeah, recoil. If recoil was gone, that might help that a fair amount.
Yeah, effective range stat. I think removing that would change a lot.
Yeah,
and
there'd be your sniper rifles.
That's for that's for like my actual like I'm playing this game forever in because I'm a PvP guy. That's like my change. Aesthetically, bring back the humans on rocket packs shooting guns at you and do no damage. I love that. I love the little tank shooting at you from like a million places and you take no damage in the game. It's purely there for you just to stomp them. I miss that so much.
Oh man.
More sniping, more stomping.
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
I love it. Yeah, you definitely beat me to it. That's exactly what I was going to say. More ranges of engagement. I understand trying to encourage us, hey, get aggressive, get in, really get some spicy melee going. But one of the core tenets of AC combat has always been really interesting engagement ranges, and where from PvP or PvE. It's always really cool to see if you're running up against that sniper design or some kind of like long range cannon, or if you're dealing with like a blade specialist or a melee specialist. Part of the soul of AC that goes into that freedom. And I know for a fact you would be able to see so many more playstyles unlocked and so much more expression. I know an instant fear is like, okay, well, it's gonna be the return of TP backpedalers. We're going back to LR with Pegasus, and you're gonna run off and run away, and we're gonna have this annoying range combat game. But I don't think so. I really think the way to go is to keep those ranges healthy. Effective range, if you want to make a short-term fix for that could be very well the quickest way to do it. Yeah. But for me personally, ACS adjustment and more ranges for combat, I think would work wonders. I'd love to see both.
So I agree with that for the most part in general. I will give one caveat though. I would like the return of sniper rifles, but it had to be in tandem with one thing and one thing only. If they don't do this, I don't want them. And that is fix the netcode. Because
that's obvious.
That's
that's a requirement for every game, dude. What the hell?
But think about it, though.
Standing order for any game.
Yeah,
if you seen half my videos, I'm complaining about the netcode.
But I want you to imagine a world where the netcode stays as it is right now, but you have sniper rifles or sniper cannons that have 1,000 or 1,200 or 1,500 meter range with like an absurd velocity with lag. I don't think you want that with the game as is.
I can finally shoot those lammers.
I mean, if there's lag, I don't know if I get hit or not hit. Anyways, they could be 2 meters away.
Yeah, that's my point. So yeah, I agree with that. I want this. No, I want to shoot down missiles again. That'd be fun. I want to shoot missiles. So
you're saying GGPO on Armored Core?
Yeah, there you go. Let's get rollback.
Let's go. Let's go.
Next, just that. So my two things. One. The number one thing I would do, I mentioned in the video when I gave my response to Striker, is this, and I still stand by it. Bring back tuning.
Yeah. Dude, the more customization, the better. Bro. Bring back radiator shit. Like, bring it all back.
Yeah. Imagine if you had 10 points of tuning to screw around with Armored Core 6's parts. The things that you could do with your AC setups to make it like even more your own. Yeah, dude, tuning hands down would be my first choice of mechanics to bring back. I think the sky is borderline the limit on what you would see in this game if tuning was an option. So tuning is a hands down must for me for a future either add-on or new game. I need tuning back. Tuning was best. And then number two, just for personal reasons, for obvious things, I'm sure Zealous will probably be able to guess what this is. Weapon arms.
Yeah, of course.
I love.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why they're not in the game.
Love weapon arms. I have taken out more bosses. I have won more matches in tournaments with weapon arms than almost anything else I've ever played throughout the series of the game. I've always loved weapon arms. They're my favorites. I like, especially like the big grenade ones. The linear arm ones are fantastic. I've loved them through the years. So yeah, bring me back tuning and bring me back weapon arms. I would love that to no end.
And that's I think it's part of what makes me wonder, could you have weapon arms without making more ranges to engage? Right? Because there's a few I could see up off the bat, like melee weapon arms, machine gun weapon arms, the classic machine gun weapon arms. Yo, shout out to
melee weapon
Warehound,
arms.
freaking Warehound. Like it's the first one I always think back, like, you know, in AC2. But with that, right? I don't see weapon arms just being melee, just being machine guns. You're gonna have the more interesting stuff, right? The classic, you know, grenade arms. Samurai, the something like the Cetus, like linear arms, but they're getting pretty crazy with the tech of AC6. Speaking with the static, now that we fully have a realized spacefaring armored core game, we're starting to get some crazy stuff, and I think from are really on point with their designs mechanically. So I can't wait to see some of the nutty things we could get. Be awesome.
Dose Mark II Coral weapon arms.
Oh gosh. You know, if you want to give me double earshot weapon arms, I won't say no.
I won't say no either, bro. That's awesome.
I wouldn't say no. All right. So is anything else that you want to bring up specifically before I move on to the comments section of the video of responses?
I'm good.
Everyone good?
Yeah, I'm good, man. Yeah.
All right.
Rock on.
All right, so my plan was I picked a few out here specifically, but I wanted to start with one specifically that was the most upvoted. So the most upvoted comments, one I want to go through real quick. So I'm going to read through it in its entirety, and then we can kind of break it down if you want. So number one, so he goes here. So this is from James Caulfield 6632, and he says, Armored Core is customization and the freedom to express my skills as an artist. We didn't touch much about that, to be honest with you, is the artistry. Like, I'm not the artist type. I can't design an AC color-wise or paint scheme or emblems with anything, but some of the things people make are absolutely gorgeous, so kudos to all you artists out there making ACs. Some of the things you guys make is insane to me. Anyways, it's a builder and a pilot. No other game in history has offered this much freedom to express these things. Although there are some drawbacks like net decking. I'm assuming... Oh, I think net decking is referring to basically like going online and just getting builds. Those are familiar with the term net decking. That's people go online and
from trading card games.
Like for trading card games, they just go take a build online and play it. Which I can understand that part. It usually becomes the meta. That's true. There is a meta thing of that, but that's always kind of been true too, though. Which can make the game very boring at times, especially when you're faced against the same 3 builds. But it's really cool when you come across somebody that's an S ranked and they're running what they call an honest payload. Because for me, those are the best fights. Because the people actually have skills and didn't rely on gimmicks or complete cheese to get them to where they are. And that can be said for all our ARM records, and it basically talk about Armored Core in general, not just Armored Core 6. We can make comprehensive lists of the things that went wrong with 6. If we took the stagger mechanic straight out of the game, which we talked a little bit about that earlier, it'd be a much better game. Yeah. The lock-on doesn't do it. We talked a little about the lock-on stuff earlier. A whole lot of justice either as far as lock-on goes. Because we share the same lock speed and distance and overboosting, there's absolutely no drawbacks, just benefits to overboosting now. And all the games they have that, their flaws and their strengths. Last Raven, 4Answer, and Formula Front, I record those 2. Another Age and Master Arena, Verdict Day 6 will always be... This guy even says, but Verdict Day and 6 will always be my favorite. So even this guy has problems with the game. They obviously love 6. So we've talked about some of those things already, as far as that goes. But I want to pick on this point a little bit here. You know, the problem with net decking. In other words, basically, just basically copying people's meta builds from YouTube videos or guides.
Okay. We got forums since like Armored Core 1.
Yeah, I know, but I can tell you personally. Now I realize there's always been metas. Metas have always existed to the point where we've had banned parts in pretty much every PS2 era game. To a point, we've had to ban certain parts because they're just ridiculous. But that being said, I can tell you from complete honesty, this is something kind of surprised me getting into this realm of Armored Core, being not the most popular game in the world with 6, but definitely the most popular it's ever been in general. Dude, there weren't build videos on YouTube.
Hell no.
That wasn't a thing.
They weren't.
That wasn't a thing. There's a bajillion of them now. There's so stinking many.
which is
And you know
crazy
what?
to see.
Which is like, first of all, part of me is like, whoa, that's a thing now because that's Armored Core. That seems bizarre. Part of me is like, yeah, I kind of get it. Like I told people, I made a video early on before the game released, and I told people to be patient and find their own way of doing things. Because that's the best way to play this game, in my opinion, is find your own path, find your own way of playing, find your own strengths, find your own parts you identify with, find your own things you love playing, and find a way to make it work. That always works better in this game, in my opinion, than just picking a meta build in general. But I think there is a whole lot more of that out there in general. Dude, if you ever go on Reddit, the Armored Core subreddit, and the posts that are on there, and the thing they suggest... Now, that's not offense to Reddit themselves, but like, here's this build, what are your suggestions? And it's always the same suggestions. You should change this for Coral Gen, you should be using this booster instead, you should be using this FCS. It's like, it's almost like they've run the math calculations. These are the parts you should be using. Why are you doing this, you idiot? Like, that's almost like the conversation people have now. And it
sounds like Reddit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's a little sad because I feel like people are robbing themselves of the Armored Core experience by doing it this way. And so I could kind of understand this person's point about net decking, which, yeah, it's always kind of existed.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think it is much more prevalent now in 6 due to its popularity with the general populace, especially From Software's general popularity growing as a whole. But yeah, I can actually see this being I think it's a bigger detriment to new players to the series than they even realize. Because they're, like I said, they're alienating themselves of the experience of discovery, which to me in Armored Core has always been huge. Like, I'll never forget, like, in Zealous's basement, playing Silent Line, when I finally fell in love with heavy bipeds. Like,
Yeah.
this is it. Like, I am heavy biped essentially for life. And I played heavy biped from all the way from Silent Line all the way through up until 6, and 6 I'm now a wheelchair warrior. But, you know, up until this point, you know, I have been a heavy biped fanatic. That's what I use. That's what I've liked. And it hasn't changed. You know what? That came through a process of discovery of playing against Zealous, playing in tournaments, playing other players, playing on X-Link Kai. Oh gosh, Link Kai days. Doing those things. And then I genuinely found where I fit. And I don't think I ever would have got that.
Yeah.
If I would have gone on and looked for other people's builds versus just spending hours in the garage and figuring it out for myself. What do you guys think?
I think I could rant to the contrary of this individual's lament for a long time. I see no problem with net decking in so much as people aren't that creative on the large scale. I don't mean to be offensive when I say fool's errand, but in any sort of game where there's going to be competition, there's going to be a very few roads that emerge as successful, and everyone who can't really envision anything new is going to have to pick one of those roads. But you're still going to see incredible displays of skill at the higher levels of using it. I still remember watching Disco versus Kiwabi. I hope I didn't butcher his name.
That sounds right to me.
But yeah, Disco, of course, the Rat King, was 4 missiles on a biped, and Hiwami was a wheelchair with, I think, twin Majestics and at least one Fasan. And their matches were in a shield. That was it. Okay. Their match was incredible. They were 2 distinct approaches to the game, and I don't think any of us here could have replicated either of their styles. But at the time, they represented the peak of the meta. I can understand the frustration of gameplay being stale or predictable. You know, I as a quad, I've got the hitbox of a large barn. So whenever I face up against a tank, I know I'm probably going to lose just because I can't mitigate all of the ordnance that's going to throw at me. And whenever I see the Lammerscheid, I call them Lammerscheis, I shouldn't, but the lightweight quad missiles, I know generally that's going to be a foregone conclusion as well, because I will have trouble catching up to them if they know what they are doing. But unless you can invent a new meta, then you're probably going to be stuck with what exists out there anyway.
Yeah, that's so true. Meta does change. You don't need balance changes to actually change meta. Someone just has to figure out what beats the meta, and then eventually it'll be like non-meta beats the meta. So then you have to worry about playing non-meta.
There's
always that.
Yeah,
variety is just a balancing issue, which can be alleviated with updates. So you can't really put that on like the internet. The internet told everybody to do this. It's like, no, if that's the best item, it is the best item. A lot of people are going to figure it out.
All a company can do is stir the pot until the new meta is discovered, and then it kind of goes back to that.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's very much like a product of the day, and this isn't just Armored Core that suffers from this.
No, it's all games.
Yeah, name the game, and you'll see. Hey, here's a list of some really ideal things to use. People are going to use them. Even down to Elden Ring. I didn't go after any form of like guide because I wanted to dive into my first kind of like Souls game to be like, okay, what am I going to find? I love that whole experience of finding stuff, watching my build change throughout the game. So, I'd run across that cool spell I didn't even know existed. I basically started that game kind of like gut style, massive, two-hand cleaver, and then I ended up ending kind of like lightning spell paladin. But it's just the stuff I found that was fun. But I know there were probably more optimal things that I could have found, right, or done. And that's the inevitable part you're going to have. That's why I'm really for giving tons of good options and then seeing what people invent coming off of that. You want to talk about good parts? Look, we're already in a better situation than we were in Armored Core 3 with internals, where the Roz was the king generator. It was so good, there were few reasons not to use it. And maybe you were having weight issue in your frame, but even then, what was it, weight like 465, I think, if I remember right? So good. There were a few ways around that, and I can't, in good conscience, say that's a cheap thing to do. So I think that's just the thing that of today that we deal with games. Period. I think it's going to take maybe a little more time of looking at AC and for people to delve around with it to see, like, look, the variability of this game is insane. And just give it time, and just what happens, patch to patch and change to change, all the cool different things that'll come out of it, and what people will develop. That's a blast. But I think that's something AC can't correct on its own. That's like every game.
Yeah. So the only thing I would say to kind of to tack onto that point a little bit is, like I said it even earlier, the meta's always existed in the game. It's existed since the original games. Like, for Pete's sake, I'm sure if we were to have an Armored Core 2 tournament, we'd probably ban Kurosawa because the thing's nuts.
Obviously,
come on, the thing was out of control.
You would probably ban multi-missile, especially the double back one, because it would just make the game unplayable because it'd lag it too hard. Like, you would have things like that always is. So meta's always had some things here and there that happened, right? But to kind of go back to what I was saying originally, when I was kind of thinking what this person was talking about. Like, you mentioned, Zealous, about the discovery. You didn't look at guys at the fact of discovery, and there are some people. I don't know. Fox mentioned it. It is true. There are some genuinely uncreative people when it comes to solution making. That is true. That's not an unkind thing to say per se. I mean, I work in the
no malice.
No,
malice.
Exactly. I work in the corporate world. Trust me. There is. You come across all kinds of people where you wonder sometimes, like, how. You know what? I'm not going to ask anymore. That's kind of what it comes down to sometimes. But yeah. I think it's because for some people, they don't give themselves enough credit. I think for some people, they've decided that, you know what, I can't do this, or I'm not good at games, or I suck at this, or I suck at that. So rather than waste my time, I'm just going to spend like half an hour to an hour Google searching the best build for what I want to play and then play it. And the problem is, I've seen lots of people, even people on forums or in Discord or in Reddit or social media. It's like, I'm using the best builds. How come I keep losing? Like, I see that a lot. Like,
I suck, bro.
Yeah. and it goes back to, you know what? You will never catch me playing a high-end rap build. You know why? One, I don't like it. And two, I haven't put enough hours into it to properly play it. I would be much better off using my wheelchair in almost 95% of fights over a more meta-ized build in a fight against another metaized build because I just understand it better, can play it better. So there is something to be said with people who are more comfortable with certain builds and how they function versus just copy and pasting and playing. I think that's why I talk about people finding what fits you, and that could be something you find online. That is true. But I think it requires more experimentation beyond, all right, here's the top 3 builds, only pick these 3. I think for some people, they'll suck at it because it doesn't fit their play style, or worse, it doesn't fit their general mentality and their approach and how they play games.
Yeah.
Like, people who play Counter-Strike, for example, there's a big difference between someone who goes in with an SMG versus someone who plays with an op. An op being the sniper rifle and SMG being the close in range. Those two people don't play the same game. They won't both be playing Counter-Strike, but they both approach the game very differently in how they play it. So I think that's where people kind of get into trouble sometimes. Like, well, everyone said this is the top end meta build. Like, well, maybe you don't play this very well. Maybe you should find something else.
I would also like to add that there might be a little bit of a disconnect that the general player has with the nature of competition. Because we play video games to entertain ourselves. And Armored Core in particular makes you this special person who created something unique that allows you to take on the world and change the world. And then you get into competition where the player's goal is to lower your AP to 0. And that is the only goal there. So you go from a kaleidoscope of experiences to suddenly 3 or 4 rigid roads of approach. And that it seems to them unfair or a design flaw. No, that's human nature. You know, the people playing professional football do not play it the same way as the little league, grade schoolers do.
Don't tell this to some parents. Some parents would disagree with you.
They would.
That's how Paulo Mulu does it. Come on now.
AC6 AC's always been designed as a single player game to begin with.
Right.
So it's like, well, maybe not Ninebreaker, right? Whatever.
Yeah,
Ninebreaker's different.
5 was really even more multiplayer.
Oh yeah,
insanely.
Yeah, but don't expect the game to be like balanced. You just shouldn't. Not for AC, not yet. Maybe they'll make a multiplayer mode. Who knows?
Or in Fox, like to your point, like people just go in like they're gonna take over the world, and then in the first mission they run into the helicopter and they can't beat it.
Yeah,
that's.
Oh, interesting side note. Looking at the Steam achievements, I don't know if the statistic has changed, but the same number of people who have gotten every achievement is the inverse to the number of people who completed the very first. So basically, 6% of people playing Armored Core were filtered, and only 6% of the people went on to completely complete the game. I thought that kind of interesting.
That number has actually gone up. There's actually more people who completed it since then. That number used to be lower.
Probably a bell curve indicator, I think.
Could be.
Interesting.
Damn, I only have 18 achievements out of 30.
Oh no! All right, fraud detected. Get out of here. I'm just kidding. I wouldn't do that to you. Okay, so that's number 1. So let me get to number 2 comment. All right. Now, before Warren, I mentioned earlier, I'm going to generally try to stay out of drama. But this comment, it's hard to not go into that territory. So this is the number 2 most voted comment. After that, I'm going to pick out other ones because the other ones had enough votes. So here's number 1. So this is from Cam. I think it says it's Hawothi 8400. All right. I'm going to read it as it's worded. I may make some adjustments. I'm pretty sure this person's. I apologize if this is insulting. I'm pretty sure English is not their first language. So there's a lot of brokenness in the sentence structure in general. So I'm just going to read it out and have you guys. We'll kind of break it down a little bit. So okay. So what makes Armored Core is easy. It's hard bosses, hard missions, fast moving mechanic. Had all the part for people to try and experiment in all of the old OS tuning so that people can design how their part work. Almost all AC game is to have the same mechanic, but AC6 have thrown it all away in what makes an AC game. And I said this again, this AC game is to make it for a newbie. And I told you this AC game will fall in the long run. And it might have won the Game Award for Best Action Game, but it didn't win for the player in the long run. And you told me not to worry, WTF, and that what you got was not listen to the people who have known what make an AC game. And now you know what I said about AC6 is more like a movie than a game. 3 hands down, thumbs down emojis, and 3 angry sad face emojis.
Damn, this guy sounds like me when Armored Core 4 came out.
So you were one of those people. No, I was kidding.
Well, I can sympathize to a degree because Armored Core 6 bent me out of shape early on. The ACS overload in particular, I thought that my customized approaches in Armored Core was completely overshadowed by boss battles where I've got to follow what the boss is doing more than what my AC can do. You know, it seems like that. His or her upsetness is kind of warranted, but at the same time, I think this Armored Core is successful enough that we're probably going to be dealing with this for quite a while. It still very much has its customization, and probably the biggest part that stands out is the drastic performance in builds, from the Lammerscheid Permaflight kite build to the full-on Zem tank, as they call it. Yeah, you get the full gambit of customization in this game, even if the mechanics are a little alien to previous Armored Cores. So, kind of disagree. Sorry. Maybe Armored Core 7 will bring it back a bit for you.
Anyone
Yeah,
else?
I mean, I disagree with him as well. The skill cap in this game is actually pretty high. I could see you getting frustrated just because like this game's unforgiving. Like you make a mistake in this game, you lose. There's no like try again, you don't lose. Like you lose in this game if you make one mistake when you play. PvP at least, I don't know. PvE, I played it 3 times. I don't know, man.
You can make some mistakes in PvE too. You can. There's some bad things can happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the funny thing is you say that, but he mentioned that the Armored Core 6 is made for newbies.
He must be talking about Hardlock. Hardlock, when you first play against, it's frustrating. You're like, I can't believe this dude's like, he can see me. I ran past him. Yeah, the mechanics of Armored Core have changed. I was frustrated with that when I first started playing as well.
Yeah.
But it's like you just have to understand like the game's a little different now. Like you can control ranges now. You don't control line of sight anymore. That's pretty much how it changed.
Maybe this person felt the tutorials were condescending.
I mean, that's a possibility.
I don't know. Outreach is good. Everything should welcome in newbies, and it should just have enough depth to it that there will be the crazy people at the top who speedrun it. You know.
Yeah, and this ties into the balance From had to strike here. Look, as far as accessibility to newbies, like I don't know. I mean, in my mind, I think if AC was just really, 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 really dumbed down, there would be so little room for your customization wouldn't matter as much.
Or skill gaps.
Yeah, more skill gaps. If even the line from Had to Walk here was you have a franchise that's coming back. It's been away for over 10 years. How do you make something accessible for people they've classically seen as inaccessible? And AC has always been seen as this very cloistered, esoteric thing that always gets maybe a 7 out of 10 or less in every review that you'll see. And I think while it isn't perfect, I think From struck the right tone of getting the accessibility, getting people in, enough familiarity, but still making that journey and inviting you to play more of it, to see the rest of the parts, to really dive into it, to get into it. I mean, I'm even thinking back to like about a year ago or so, even going to like the first press event. From how I felt playing AC6 then to now, it's night and day. And part of that is some of my own biases, I admit, especially if you come from a previous generation of AC and you want to get that feeling now. You want that immediately. That's not going to happen. Even myself, like loving playing quads forever. They've changed so much to where they're reminding me a lot of the old school hovers, mixed with classic quad gameplay. So being willing to be, I think, open to restyle what you're doing and realizing that this is a completely different AC. But no, I don't think it's dumbed down to the point where it's just the easiest easiest to access thing. It's easier to pick up than an AC's, but it's still, that ceiling is pretty high. And I can think of a few other ways From Software could have played their hand there to get more people into AC.
Yeah, to kind of build the point, to kind of address what he's saying here. So the newbie thing, I can somewhat understand it. If you came from like previous Armored Core games and came into this one, I can see where you thought that they kind of disregarded the older player base to a point for the favor of the new player base. Which I hate to break it to people, they're a video game company making video games for people to buy and play games. So I understand, as much as you want to respect the original title and the origins of the series, you also have to make sure your game wants to be played by new players, because if you don't get new players, your game never happens again.
Yep.
You have to get new people to buy your game. You have to. If you don't get new people to buy your game, it ain't going to happen anymore. So I understand that frustration, but at the same time, if it really was that newbie friendly, then explain to me how 40 plus gaming journalists couldn't write a proper review for Armored Core 6 before it came out because they couldn't get past either the helicopter or Balteus.
Oh, a pigeon was able to outperform a games journalist. Okay, that they're no metric. They are no metric for any game.
Well, that's my point, though. It's like, if it really was so newbie friendly, that shouldn't have been that hard. But a lot of people, there's a reason why they had the memes online of the helicopter with the where the bullets coming out that said filter. That's the reason why that was a thing, because people were generally frustrated with it. They didn't know what to do, and so it's like, it can't be that noob friendly or that hand-holdy with that number of people griping online they couldn't get past the helicopter. Now, granted, for us, it wasn't that hard. We had to get used to the mechanics like everybody else did, but us Armored Core vets, we adjusted pretty fast. It wasn't that hard to figure out what you had to do at that point. But to address the second point here, though, where you're going to lose in the long run, right? I hate to break it. This thing sold 2.8 million games in the first quarter alone. Like,
best-selling AC, period.
Fastest-selling AC, period. Like, it's not even close.
No, you guys, the PS1 demo disc, I assume, did better.
Yeah, that's possible. Sure. I can see it happen. That demo disc was everywhere. It really was everywhere.
You got in the mail, bro.
Exactly. It went everywhere. The game is, and it's honestly, it's popular enough. And the most popular games ever. Now, granted, a lot of it has to do with From Software's current popularity thanks to the Soul series, or as I like to call it, the Dark Ages, pun intended. But you have the sentiment here, though I can appreciate the frustration. It's not the game you were expecting. I don't think Armored Core 6 was, for a lot of people, was the game they necessarily were expecting. Like, they're looking for return to form for Armored Core. And yes, there are quite a few mechanics changes in the game that do make it more, shall we say, user-friendly. Things like the hard lock, things like the 1-to-1 movement ratio with the camera. There's a lot of the increase in melee ability, because everyone loves swords, because people just love swords. You have, yes, all that is true. But that being said, the game is still just about as complicated as it's ever been. It may be easier to approach for new players. It isn't really any less complicated. It's not. So I understand the frustration. I'm not going to discount the opinions because it's different than mine. But this sounds like someone who was hoping for one thing and got another, and the disappointment was too much. Which for some people that happens.
It was definitely different. I hated that Sea Spider so much.
Oh yeah, Sea Spider. Although my least favorite was the worm.
Really?
Okay, so just for me, the button that I use on my mouse to fire my my right shoulder button is a little difficult to press. I'll end up hitting my left shoulder while trying to press it. It's an awkward button for me, and I had this required weapon with low muzzle velocity on my weakest spot, and it's like, you're shoehorning me in such a way.
Yeah.
But good gravy, they made that so theatrical, though.
I mean, it's cool. Is all get out. It's cool. My gripe with the Ice Worm boss fight is that it's the least Armored Core like boss fight in the whole game, in my opinion.
Yeah,
like it's extremely scripted. And
Yeah,
you have
it's
to
so
follow,
weird, bro.
You have
Yeah,
to follow
yeah.
a very exact mechanic in order to beat him. There's no, you can bring in pulse weapons and do it instead. Sure, there's ways of beating without using the stun needle launcher. I get it, but the way the mission itself is scripted, it's a scripted fight.
That's true.
Whereas all the other boss fights, yeah, they are scripted as far as how they quote unquote show up and what happens, like in phase 1, phase 2, or whatever. But that it's between you and the boss, and you just fight it out for the rest of them.
Yeah.
So that's my problem with the Iceworm mission. All right, more comments here. Here we go. From John DeMarco 4286 says, to me, Armored Core is all about customization. There it is again. The parts, the art, the emblem, the call signs, the war about between big corporations. Far into the future in other worlds, hiring mercenary ACs. It's about the competitiveness of the arena, the rankings, the backstory of the pilots, and their unique combat styles. So this guy pretty much agrees with us. Like, that's
Bring
pretty
back
much...
Count 1.
Yes, the personality.
Yeah.
We need that guy again.
Oh man, that's
One,
awesome.
one, one,
You
one.
know, quick, super quick. No, I'm not gonna tangent. Someone, I've seen a couple really good, what they call a legacy design series. Someone made a really good prisoner B42, whatever design from AC2 with the grenade. That's fun. That was really fun.
I like one person's answer because it was very unique and different. This is from @Pokang. Pokang says, what is Armored Core? Build cool mech while shady corpos rub their dirty hands till you fall into debt and everyone loses in the end. I love that answer. It's great. But he says, in my honest opinion, it was a poor man's Gunpla game. Too poor as a kid to buy model kits, but as I grew up in Armored Core 1 and loved it and grew to hate a lot of other Gundam video game franchises for having a higher bar in mechas in general. After finishing the video, Armored Core is also the vision realized and executed better after the mini-sequel. I love the concept of a poor man's Gunpla. I love that concept.
If I may make a note of another game, there is a game still in development called Mass Builder, with mass being an acronym. And that game's control is, there's not too much that you can do with it, but the amount of customization that you can do in piecing parts together very much feels like Gunpla or Models. If this individual has not heard of that game, they ought to take a look at it.
Cool.
Yeah, I've seen them. I've seen Mass Builder. I've seen it.
Yeah. Nowhere near the depth of Armored Core, sadly. But
Yo, this is probably crazy.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm looking at it right now. It's crazy.
Yep. So this is probably one of my personal favorite answers I got in the comment section. Ready?
All right.
This one's from Isaac Tirulio, 5222. It says, Armored Core is a dystopian mech franchise revolving around mercenaries and mechs that usually give you a choice between who you serve and for what gain. A really close aspect that makes Armored Core besides the foundation would be its music, which usually was and still should be not afraid to clash with the heavy tone of the corrupt corporate world, usually bringing some of the jams that are anything but ambience. But looks Armored Core sounded with a disappointing content. Now, I realize if you guys listen to Disc 3 of Armored Core 6 contract, the Disc 3 is insane. Everything and anything Armored Core couldn't be flipped on its head, but these two columns must always be met to agree to make or break an Armored Core game. So FYI, I found Armored Core via its music first.
Interesting.
Which then got me
awesome,
invested into the scenarios when my favorite song plays. Really hoping From Software nails the music in the sequel because I was hesitant with 6's soundtrack. If you ask me, AC music is a fanatic like me. Like a dude being introduced to the series because of the music. I love that answer.
That's so cool.
I can easily see that. Armored Core music soundtracks have been experimental, too, to some degree. I still have Circulation playing from Armored Core 1.
Classic.
That just still gives me chills because I was very young when I was introduced to that song. Heck, it's the one that plays the very first. If you get in the first Armored Core, the very first thing you do is dropped into combat. Here you go. If you survive, you're a Raven, and it's playing Circulation. And then, of course, I start thinking of things like Lithium and what was the other one from Armored Core 5?
Yeah.
And, of course, Armored Core 4 was all about angelic singing. And
Yeah,
Just
for you had so many like that. And rock too. The
yeah.
rock really came more in during Nexus, but I mean, yeah, from AC4 soundtrack like Panther, Pray for the Power.
Mhm.
I mean, we can go on and on with that. It's so cool someone discovering AC based off of soundtrack. And I'll openly say, look, Cleric, it's crazy to me that for 6, in my opinion, some of the best soundtrack stuff came out after the point or after the
Yep.
fact. Like that stuff we got released for the extras are fantastic. I'm literally sitting here screaming, why isn't that in game? I think AC6's soundtrack was tame in comparison to a lot of the stuff we've had before. It's a lot more ambient, cinematic, sort of
I could see that.
post-apocalyptic.
Yeah.
Yeah, very subtle. Even the garage themes. Now they change a little bit as we go through the game, and some of those are good. But that was missing for me, big time. I mean, you're talking about a series like of post-apocalyptic destruction, but you'll have a soundtrack going like Silent Line, or an AC3, Monkey Likes Daddy, and then like the remixes, like Super Monkey Likes Daddy, Morning Lemon Tea. One of my favorites from AC3, Move the Car. Crazy,
Move the car.
crazy, like batty stuff. But wow, yeah. I hope so too. I mean, like the extra stuff we got out after AC6 is released. I think Koto Hoshino, especially the tracks he worked on, he knocked that out of the park. Please bump that up to 11 for an expansion to AC6. Bring that back in. The music is one of the things I get most hyped on in this series.
Yep. Yeah, Armored Core, and something I didn't touch on specifically, but yeah, the Armored Core soundtracks as a whole have just been some of the best, period. Like, it's just... what's interesting, a lot of video game music is good. A lot of video game music is really good and iconic. Yeah. There's not a lot of video game music that are bangers by themselves, that don't require being attached to a video game to be good, that they're good completely on their own. And
right.
There are so many Armored Core tracks that would fit that bill. It's nuts. So many tracks would be standalone. There are things which actually people already do. People already go to frequency concerts. That's something that already happens in Japan. There are people who would just go to concerts to hear that music played, just for that. Not caring about the fact it's attached to a video game at all. They just want the fact that you want to hear the music. That's it. Anyways, all right. So Striker 505 responded to the video. It's like, what is Armored Core? The Armored Core, I first and foremost think, is freedom to express yourself in a context of mech combat. In every single Armored Core game, you have the ability to customize your AC with whichever parts you want, depending on on the title, whatever tunings you want, whatever weapons you want, varying degrees of basic effectiveness, but no matter what, it's your AC. It goes even further when you factor in skill expression, showing off mastery of mechanics, learned knowledge, practice technology to make you play the way you truly your own, writing your own story as you play your own or with others. It's a forever... I like this. Here's the phrase I really like here. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
It's a forever student series of games.
Mm.
Where you're always learning new things about the games or new ways to become better and experiment with all the tools that are given to you. Not to mention all the development in the way of decals, paint schemes, schematics, emblems, and all that have been seen in absolute works of art created using those systems and AEC games. They're unlike anything else in gaming. I love that.
Well said.
It's a forever student series.
Well said.
I love that concept.
That's top of the line comment there.
Well said.
It was only a couple days ago that I learned that quick boosting will reset your generator's timer for when it replenishes.
Subtleties, man. See?
700 hours in the game, and I didn't realize that I was shortchanging myself on recovery by making that little panicked quick boost at the end.
All right, so kind of go back to you mentioned earlier, Fox. This is Gray Nan's comment. Gray is a regular in my Discord. He's been around and is very an often contributor to a lot of conversations in games.
I've seen him a couple of times.
I like this. So he says, as someone who started with Gen 3 and still prefers it the most, he says, I think the thing that struck me the most was the fact that you play as the pilot and not the mech.
Yes.
Specifically in the way you control the mech and the way it handles and how the handling the mech is intrinsically linked to the way you build your mech, and what parts you use really make me feel I'm just some guy in a pilot seat of some crazy death machine that I designed. I love you play as the pilot in the mech. You don't play as the mech.
Yep. There's
It's so good.
just enough abstraction that you can feel that it's a machine around you. You know.
Very cool.
Yeah, I always thought that was like that was like inherent. Like, you're talking to people. You're not a remote control car fan. I do like how in AC6 there's a super lightweight core that actually shows the core, and it's like, oh yeah,
that's
Yeah.
good.
you are laying down in the core. This is a go-kart. This is awesome.
I'm about to die.
So rad.
All right,
Oh.
I like this one too. I like this one. Just breaks it down into like roguish bullet points, and I love it. All right, so this is from Squid Overlord 3362. It's like, I know I'm kind of late, but hear me out. What makes AC is this: rival corporations, space politics and war crimes, being a hired gun for corps, rogue AIs, arena PvP and PvE, being able to carry and wield 4 weapons, EN and weight management, math, also known as spreadsheets. The ability to change every part of your mech frame and not just throw weapons on a body you can't change or edit. The overboost.
Yes.
Yes.
The soundtracks by Kota Hoshino. Yep, we all just talked about earlier.
Yep.
The inclusion of reverse joint quad and tread legs alongside weapon arms, which you kind of mentioned that in your intro there, Yaka. Human faces are never shown. There's some argument on there, but you're 95% correct. And most importantly, from software.
We could have had an entire conversation on some of the reoccurring themes that occur through Armored Core titles. We discussed the mechanics and, of course, the overall motif of being an outsider, a nobody who bucks the system from one shadowy puppet master to either chaos or some other shadowy puppet master. But among the themes that keep occurring in Armored Core are things such as transhumanism. From the very first Armored Core of Human Pluses to even now, this Coral. I like to laugh with my friends about which ending they would choose if they found themselves in the game. And I would flat out, just by fear, burn the Coral. That was my instinctual opinion of the matter. Like, if God wants us to fuse with this entity that seems to be exponentially growing and capable of manipulating technology, then I'm going to lose anyway. But I can't dare let this thing... I'm sorry, Air. I don't even know if you're real or if you're the Coral tricking me into serving it.
Definitely Coral tricking you. It's
Yes.
awesome. I love this game so much.
Yeah.
That whole part where it is definitely tricking you.
Yeah. Besides, Walter treated me nice. He's the best shadowy puppet master I've ever had.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of tropes
Yes.
that I love in this game that are in a lot of games, like research agency who destroys the world.
Always the scientists.
Older ACs that suck, but you remember them from older games. It's like they did everything. They did it all in AC6. That's why I love this game so much.
They did, and I even love the idea of piggybacking off of the 8+ experiments and the whole thing with transhumanism. The usage of one of the most doofy red guns that we meet early on, right? Going all the way to become the center of all mind, and not really caring. The fact that they just see him as this tool to be manipulated and used really reminded me of AC1, how your road to success, you don't know it then, hinges on you failing a bajillion times. You fail so much where you go into debt so desperately that literally it's like, all right, you are going to dedicate your body to science, whether you like it or not, and we are going to rebuild you into what you should be to pay off our debt.
Like
so
you could use some help.
The usual route.
Yeah, and just that idea of giving a hand or help to realize, right, or like to realize what you want to do. So it's like, hey, you seem to be struggling to do much. You're stuck in debt. You're stuck with the red guns. Everybody's stepping on you. 61's killing you all the time. Let's give you a hand here. We'll help you.
Oh, so good. All right.
Love it.
By the way, for those of you, I'm not going to read every single comment. There's a ton here, but honestly, I really don't have any qualms with almost any of them. A couple of them are a little, pointed, but for the most part, I really like most of the comments. So if I don't read your comment,
yeah, they're great comments.
It doesn't mean I don't like your comment. I'm not. I don't want this podcast to be 5 hours, okay? Because
you were deemed unworthy.
No, don't go that route. No. I picked a few out because they have maybe a slightly different take than other ones. So I kind of wanted to point out, like the Forever Student thing was something, I found it through music. I wanted to highlight some individual ones that were very different.
I do like that quote.
Yep, Forever Student's great. So AC Foxeye comments here. AC Foxeye is a fellow Jacko fan here. Been on my chat quite a bit over the last year in the streams. But it says, my history with Armored Core is a bit weird. I got 5 and 4 answer on the same day in 2012. So you got both games at once. Right? So that's obviously, they're very different games. So I was immediately exposed to both extremes. I found a lot I like both styles, though, and I got to play the classic titles a couple years later when I finally had a computer that could emulate them as well. He says here, oh, I just lost it. 1 second. My computer suddenly scrolled up weirdly.
Oh, no, it's okay. You'll find it.
There it is. All right. So besides controlling like a Japanese real roll-up machine that it has to be wrestled with, a good AC game should always balance customizability and constraint by making you seriously consider each part choice and forcing you to find clever ways to use them. One of the things I love about the series is that it encourages you to explore different builds and eventually look good doing it. There are things I'd like to still have seen brought back from the older games, but I've enjoyed what 6 has to offer. I like what it mentions here, where it says it's like wrestling with the robot, where it says you have to balance between customizability and constraint. Because customizability we love, but you got to make sure you don't customize yourself into oblivion. And that is true. Because you can in this game.
When I first started playing Armored Core in PCS1 stages, I got paranoid about running out of ammo. I started learning to make better shots. I started using a blade just as a backup when I could, but it was always in the back of my mind, even until like 5, I was worried about running out of ammo.
All right, so I gotta grab a drink real quick. I'll be right back. You guys keep going.
All right.
Oh yeah, running out of ammo, dude. Let's talk about Last Raven, bro. Let's talk about like
here we go.
You knew you were gonna run out of ammo unless there was like 2 guns. There's like that machine gun with 800 ammo.
Yep.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, so it was like I feel you there, man. Like, and also in Last Raven, you didn't know how long the missions were gonna be because they just kept getting longer.
True.
Be like, kill these 2 ACs, and then it'd be like, oh. Here's one more.
Yeah, by the way.
Yes.
I know you've died 50 times to these 2 ACs, but here's one more. Yeah.
I saw some YouTuber who was going through Armored Core 6 for the first time, and he just got to the Iguazu fight, and Iguazu goes through his monologue, and the YouTuber is going on, yeah, what is that 2 fucking sea spiders? Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh man.
I tell you, that's one thing I missed from 5 was calling down resupply. And that's kind of what I meant earlier with scope. I would like to return to sort of a sensation of campaigns, not just missions. You know.
Right.
You know, of course, I don't know how it would be implemented, and I don't know if 6 would be compatible with such an idea.
Yeah.
Maybe Armored Core 7.
That would be
they better make
question.
Armored Core 7 open world.
Oh gosh, I'm not sure the world is ready for an open world Armored Core. Oh gosh, the scale
like
of
you
that.
Just like it's like actually just like you're on a planet, you know.
That would just be
fly
absurd.
to the shop. I'm into it.
All right. Anyways, so with that, we have McGildy Gaming mentioning like, ooh, interesting question. I played all of Armored Core 6. I'll chime in here. He mentions he grew up with Master of the Arenas, where he grew up with.
Cool.
Didn't have a PS2, so he never had a chance to play Gen 2 or 3. He had played a little bit of Gen 4 and Gen 5, and was college. So for him is this. He has they're pretty long here. I'm going to give his main points, which for him, Armored Core is multiplayer game. Get to that in a second. It is Armored Core for me is a soundtrack you're blasting in your car. Okay, we all hard agree with that one.
Yeah.
Yep.
Armored Core for me is model kits for amateur engineers. We'll get to that here more in a second here too.
Oh, okay.
And Armored Core for me is humanoid mecha. Obviously, we've had the lake types in there too, but you have, look at the discussion though. The one thing he mentions here, where he says multiplayer game. Now we mentioned earlier how you can tell by the way it's funny. It's a game that has clear multiplayer mechanics designed into it.
Right.
Yet it's still focused on single player gameplay.
Well,
I know you're always confused when you play the game. You're like, what?
Well, I think six actually scaled back the idea of multiplayer, because in 4, or at least in 4 answers, I recall it was possible for 2 men to go through the mission together. You were able to play co-op in 4.
Was that 4?
I'm pretty sure 4 or 4 answer allowed you to, and of course 5 let you play 2-player co-op and was centered around a 5-man team for versus. But 6 is kind of taken a step back where yes, there is 1-on-1 and even 3-on-3, but it seems to be a bit more focused on the single player. I'm just rambling at this point, but I could see if you make a jump from the PlayStation 1 to suddenly Armored Core 4, it would certainly seem like they geared it towards multiplayer.
It was 4 answer, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought I remember like what was it, the big box mixed in with like Maltzel and stuff. I do remember that being multi. Yeah.
All right, so
I mean, like, even those, even in Master of Arena, like, when you played the game, you'd be like, why does this part exist? Like, it's not for, it's not for the missions. Like, this part is for multiplayer. And that's been peppered in every single AC game. Yeah.
You think do you think the AI cares about the fact that you've made yourself invisible to radar and junk? You think the AI cares?
No, don't care, bro. It's great though. I always thought that I was always hoping like, oh, one day they're just gonna do it. They're gonna be like, okay, this is a fighting game. Please, please, From Software, please do it.
Yeah,
Just
so
make
yeah,
it a fighting game.
that's kind of what I've always put it as. It's a game that has multiplayer mechanics, but it's still designed for a single player experience. So it's like the combat feels multiplayer, but it's placed in a single player environment first and foremost. So it's interesting to think about it that way. That really is how it works, though. All right, so I have 1 or 2 more here I want to go over.
Sure.
So I had Dr. Wiley Coyote 5357 said this. Says Armored Core is customizable mech game, speed it up, slow it down. As long as we can make our mechs look how we like, I'm good. Armored Core to me is purely science fiction game. No space magic, no demons. We're fighting in wars with each other, sometimes with corporate motivated, sometimes now. Yeah, that's true. Like, that is now. Armored Core has some amazing music, the kind you want to listen to outside of the game. So I like where it says like this is a science fiction game, no space magic, no demons. So I mean, we obviously had some organisms that obviously were scientifically based here too.
Oral's getting pretty close to space.
It's pretty close.
It's as close as it's ever gotten.
That's why I brought this comment up, because with Coral, we're kind of getting there a little bit. What do you think?
Yeah,
I completely agree. Yeah, it's like every item literally breaks the mechanics on purpose. Like, I do like the idea; it does make like the game funner, but like, it is getting close to magic.
Well, come to think of it, we've never had Alien, with the exception of Mars having been built by something other than those who are occupying it in Armored Core 2, but that was never elaborated on.
I always thought Unmaker was an alien.
Yeah, it's easy just to think that.
Elaborate on that, please. I like that theory. Go for it.
I don't know. I was younger. You're playing, and like I was playing Another Age. And then you get to Unmaker. They don't tell you you're gonna play this guy. And it's just like you see it. It talks to you, but it goes like. Bzz, bzz, bzz. I was like, oh, and it has question mark as the name. I'm like, yeah, this is an alien. Infinite Flight 2 and AC2, too crazy.
I am also of the opinion that Zenaida is pretty darn close for magic as well.
That's because Zenaida is unfair.
psychotic
Unfair.
Danida on Back from Hell. Yes.
Yeah, if people talk about difficulty in Armored Core 6, I always tell them, go play Last Raven.
Never forget.
Then come back and talk about difficulty in Armored Core 6. Go play Last Raven.
Yeah, Last Raven is just mean too because you can't get all the parts unless you beat everything, man.
It's
correct.
mean game. Mean game.
Try
You were
talking
talking-
her down, you know.
Yeah, you were talking about the running out of ammo stuff earlier. You know, the other thing I always laughed about was, you think mission's over? Nah, have a couple pulverizers. Yeah, you know you wanted them.
It's
Oh,
so-
yeah, a couple.
Yeah.
Literally a couple in the one mission, literally two.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh man, Last
Evil.
Raven nightmares. All right, so I only got two more I want to go over specifically. All right, so this one I kind of want. This kind of brings a more realistic approach, which I kind of like. So this is from Soloing Rusty Yo Buddy, which I guess you know what they like. Because Last Raven was my first AC game. He says because Last Raven was his first AC game. Last Raven is the best. All right, you know what? Kudos to you.
You're a lucky person for that being your first AC game.
Yes,
High five.
great experience first, or not, depending on how you look at it. When I hear Armored Core, I think of world reality similar to ours, where mega corporations are major powers and constantly trying to gain an upper hand over each other. They develop private military, combat mech suits, and hire pilots, so customizable mechs is a big thing. Also, the mecha must feel heavy, but can have the ability to move 3-dimensionals quickly. The mech should feel like an extension of the pilot. Management of the energy usage, knowledge of weapon capabilities, knowledge of mech frames or limits are important for mission success. The mech is strong and powerful, but mistakes can end you. So if you fail the mission, you get punished. I think it would be interesting to have a rep system in AC game, where if you fail a mission, you lose rep, which would affect what missions you can get or how future missions play out. Like if you have a good rep with an offer with more credits, higher priority missions, you have to have a bad rep, you get less credits and terrible jobs. I don't know something more about going into debt. I never played Formula Front, but heard about and watched a few videos. Probably would be better in that setting. So two things I gleaned from this. So number one, like the world or reality, like our actual world we live in, like today, where mega corporations or major powers are constantly trying to gain the upper hand over each other.
You know,
So people often talk about how From Software, these games were always essentially a giant political commentary against mega corporations. That's kind of what it's always sort of been. But you know what? I think it's kind of a mecha thing in general.
Yeah.
It's
A lot of
definitely
mecha
a
things.
mecha trope in general.
It's a trope in general. It really is.
I'm of the opinion that having corporations as the villains also gives them a lot of freedom without being tied to anything real world. From Software understands that video games need to be immersive, not to be a tacit point. So instead of having a future estimate of where our nations would be in the future, you just have corporations. Corporations come and go. You know, we have McDisnosoft versus or Orange Inc. or something. You know,
Yep.
But yeah, Armored Core's theme being shadowy control, and corporations really fit that bill. You know.
Yeah.
And we're now in the modern era. We're running into the AI thing now.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's now becoming a thing. You know,
Yeah.
you think about back in the 90s, you know, Nine Ball, essentially you had the silent line, you know, and this like underarching, you know, control of everything, you know, with this AI thing. It's like yeah, whatever, science fiction. It's been a common plot point for years. It's like now we're like, oh crap.
Yeah, every corporation's trying to make an AI now.
Exactly. That's where we're at now.
It's great.
I think it'll lead to a dark future, but not any of the forms that we've explored before.
Oh
no,
no.
It's going to be an automated idiocracy.
No, it's going to be a dystopia, just just without any of the cool stuff in it. Is what's going to happen.
Welcome, not sure.
Exactly. So then you got the second part of this here too, the rep idea. I kind of like the rep idea, where based on what missions you choose, either gives you either higher priority or higher paying jobs with said corporation that you have a good quote unquote rep with, versus ones that you don't or that you fail missions for. Now, this is almost like the story plot line structure you see in some games, where based on what missions you take, you see other ones. So you have a little bit of that in some of the games already. but I like the concept of like an actually visible rep system being in the game.
You would
I think that's cool. That it would make the game like so much more replayable on even because like the whole design of AC used to be infinitely replayable. I think it would add a lot to it.
Well,
to be honest,
if you want a rep system, then you are going to need a lot more missions than we have. Armored Core 6 is a pretty long Armored Core game, but looking back on it, all of the missions were really tightly designed for the story. They had a significant point in a singular story. And a rep system, if you're going to have something where you're actually building in time or losing over time with a company, you need something a little bit more ambiguous, a little bit more open world maybe. If Armored Core ever becomes an MMO, I could see that. And I think Armored Core could be turned into an MMO, but that's an entirely new topic in and of itself. But yeah, rep system, I could see that.
Cool. All right. I got one more here, then a joke one at the end here. All right. My last sort of serious point here is from at Breakpoint1008, and it's a pretty long comment, but there's one particular portion I wanted to pull out and discuss. It says, I like these good boss fights. Like, give me more now. Yes, some of them may be more Souls-like bosses, but I don't see how that's a loss. I see it as a win. I would have liked to see more Arms Fort missions, though, than we had. So I don't see I like his points. Like, look, give me really cool and interesting and intriguing boss fights. I don't care. I kind of like that concept to a point. Like I said, my biggest gripe was the Ice Worm. It was the most scripted fight there was. It wasn't just a one-on-one mech combat kind of thing. We gets bigger bosses that have more capabilities than you. But yeah, I'm all for more interesting and engaging boss fights. I am all for it.
I loved fighting Arms Forts. Arms Forts
were great.
Significantly
to me, that was the highlight of FA.
But it wasn't. It didn't feel as scripted, And it is fun to tear chunks off of something big. An MT steps around the corner, one shot, it falls to the ground. Yeah, not so good. But if you got something with like 40 cannons on its shoulders and double missile launchers, and you tear one of those missile launchers off and it's still going, and you get to shoot more parts off of it, yeah, that is dopamine right there.
The Arms Forts are really the evolution, at least in my mind, of Destroy Massive MT. I mean, we've had this since Chrome Murakumo, like come AC1, and I think Arms Forts took that to the next level. And of course, we had the Strider early on in AC6, which was an amazing mission to have that early. Very cool.
I think that may have been more of a homage to previous Armored Core people than anything. They're like, yeah, let's throw in one Arms Fort.
Yeah.
They made Strider chew paper though, man. I was like, come on, bro. What is this?
Go defend the Strider. It's already blowing up.
Yeah.
That was great. That was great.
By the way, you can die to that thing. Just FYI.
The explosion. I figured you could.
You can get close enough. You can die.
Gotta try it.
So, and last but not least, or is a little bit least because it's getting more of a joke than anything else. From user comment, this is Hijo. Hijo says it's very short. It's only 3 words. It is core is armored.
Not anymore. We've got the Lammer side core.
That's true.
Exposed, baby.
Exposed.
And honestly, the funny thing is that phrase. The reason I'm even bringing it up, other than I think it's kind of funny to have the meme or a joke on here, that actually was a very common meme statement. Like when you saw people streaming this game for the first time when it first came out, it's like I'm like the way of saying that my body is ready. Said my core is armored. Like that was the phrase I must have seen like 1,000 times on social media sites. Like my core is armored. And the thing about this though, the reason I bring it up for this reason, Armored Core, at least for a space of like 2-3 months, was in the social gaming sphere vernacular to the point where people were discussing it in non-Armored Core spaces.
Yeah.
I had my normie friends talking to me about Armored Core.
That's crazy.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's so crazy.
something that never I never would have even dreamed being a thing. And what I find interesting about this specifically is this: you have an opportunity here, and this is what I want to talk about with what the conversation along the lines of what is Armored Core. I almost think this question is a challenge to From Software. It's, look, you now have a platform. You sat on your flagship series for a long time. You focused on your new cash cow. Not that we blame you for that. Like, the Souls games are making you money hand over fist. You now From Software can basically just slap their name on a game right now and make millions of dollars because people love their games.
Hell yeah.
And so I don't blame them for doing that thing. But you also could tell with the love and that's why people don't give. I think sometimes when people don't give AC6 enough credit, you could tell there was a lot of love and passion put into a lot of the aesthetics, the design, into the artwork, into
Absolutely.
into the world building, into the voice, into the character choices, a lot of the throwbacks and callbacks to the older games in the series. Like, you can tell they have genuine love for their flagship series, and you can see that love in Armored Core 6. And so, asking the question, what is Armored Core? I think this is an opportunity now that From has this platform. Now that Armored Core 6 was enough of a success to them to validate them continuing the series. Where they said they want to do more, so that's good. But we're going to see more at some point. Will it look like? I don't know. We're going to see more here at some point. They need to answer this question for people, because people are still asking, like, what is Armored Core? They're asking that question because between the old fans and the new fans, is 6 going to be the impetus of things to come, or we're going to see more vast changes? Or we see more things changing, or will you see them build on what they had and move forward? Or will they be like, look, we like what we did, as Miyazaki said, there's some things we think need some improvement. Do they scrap it and start fresh again? Or do they try to show people, like, hey, yes, there are some things we wish were better. Here's a more complete version of our vision. Here's an improved version we think you guys would like better. So what do you think From Software's answer is moving forward?
Please wait 5 or 6 years.
Don't say that, bro. Don't do that to me.
Let's say
I don't want to have
Not another
a
not
full
another
gray beard.
119 months, okay?
I can still laugh about it though, because at least they delivered big. Seriously, 11-year drought, folks. But
119 months.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is like, they do truly love this game. They didn't have to bring back this game. They didn't have to bring back this game when 5 came out.
no.
That's true.
They really do love this game. This game is the core, pun intended, of From Software. And they still keep it to this day. I think AC6 was so good. There's no way they're gonna scrap it and redo it. They're definitely just gonna expand upon it. AC6's masterclass game. It is so good. I love this game.
Good stuff. Yeah, man. I mean, look, there's no way we don't see more of the same. And one indicator is trends. Traditionally, when we've seen an expansion to a numbered AC, you see a refinement of things that we had before. But they just get better. They get more expanded. We get more parts. We get a more robust version of some of the mechanics we had before, and they usually become more playable, more interesting. There's more freedom, more energy, like less of the negative stuff you like less heat, like in the past games and things like that. So I'd be careful. I think anyone who's thinking that, well, every AC game is just going to be 6 exactly from here on out. While there is a lot of 6 that does very well, one thing you're almost guaranteed to continue evolving, if we know From Software in the track record, is AC evolving. So I think that's kind of like saying, Armored Core 2 comes out and it's like, well, every AC is going to be this. No, it's always a surprise basket, because From has so many interesting ideas for the series, and even several things that I found myself smiling about. Just the love and aesthetic touches, like seeing, I know we've been talking a lot about quads tonight, but the tetrapods, seeing them go into flight mode, just the animations to that is just spectacular. So I would say expect an expansion to refine things we have here, but I don't think that necessarily means we'll have it always. I know during the 4-and-4 answer era, there were people hoping that like the super blitzing gameplay, the dual melee weapons, the PA shields, that was going to be there forever, and that's obviously changed. But we still have quick boost, and that's one of the most major things that's remained from the 4 era. So always expect.
I doubt they'll get rid of it either.
I doubt they're getting rid of it. There was a time where I had hoped for like a shorter overboost charge or something interesting like that. But I think we're starting to see quick boost with under the right controls, where you're not just pinging off every wall every half second. It can be a fun mechanic. So I don't think it's going anywhere.
It's too cool, man. I love it.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So that's more or less the stuff I wanted to cover in this topic.
Cool.
Does anyone have any final thoughts or any final things they wish to share?
I will add, or just on a personal note, thanks for having me.
Oh, of course, Fox. Like I said, so let me. I made a joke in it. So let me. I forgot to say earlier. I alluded to it in your introduction. So to give you an explanation why I gave the introduction I gave for Fox. All right, so Zealous here, myself, some other players in the Midwest community. They weren't too big, we weren't too small. I mean, we had decent sized. Well, like ACMM3 was like 28, 29 players.
ACM3 9-breaker, right?
9-breaker, yeah.
Yeah, I believe so. That was the last one in Janesville, Wisconsin.
Yeah, around the 30-player mark, which a bunch of people traveling hundreds of miles with CRT TVs and the PS2 and FireWire cables. That's not a small undertaking. With that being said, we had made jokes for years and years and years. Like, look, someday, somewhere, some random guy is going to show up. He's going to be insane at this game. And he's going to show up like, who's this random person, some nobody, and just start wrecking face. And then we had the last one we did was the last Raven tournament.
Yep.
ACMA 2, right?
ACMA 2, yep. That was in Peoria, Illinois.
In Peoria, Illinois. And the one you hosted. And, we started messaging the guys, Foxfire, and Fox showed up. Like, oh, hey, who's this guy? He's wanted to come in here. You told me there's some new player coming. Like, oh, cool. We introduced ourselves, introduced yourself. We talked a little bit. We did a little bit of warm up. And you proceeded to just go through and go like man, this guy's good. Like this guy is legitimately good. And then got to the point where you and I face each other, Fox, in the semifinals. Mm-hmm. The loser final to go to grand finals in the tournament. And it was like, man, this thing. So it was amazing that we always had predicted that someone existed in somewhere that was amazing, loved this game and was amazing, and just never went to tournaments. And then literally, lo and behold, like 6 or 7 years later, you actually made that happen. It was one of the coolest experiences I've ever had at a tournament, was that.
All right. I'll have to name one of my AC's Dark Horse then.
Yep.
Dark.
Yeah.
All right. And then Yaka, I made reference to the OB squad, the Overboost gang. I made
the longest running community in AC now.
Let's go.
Just about, yeah. The Overboost gang was prolific because one, they loved Overboost, but two, you guys had a fairly prolific existence back in the X-Link Kai days. Like, you guys played a lot back on Kai, I remember.
Yeah, it was so much fun too. We figured out all like the animation canceling and stuff together. Yep. It is just a lot of fun. It's weird how the net code for that was better than this game.
Yeah, because there was the Cap'n,
who I can't find. Please help me find this guy.
I'll go looking for it if you want to. I found a lot of people.
Please.
Since Armored Core 6 come out. I've found all kinds of random people. So who knows?
You found me, bro. You found me on my YouTube. When I had like 45 followers on YouTube.
I found Mayhem from Mayhem and Baker randomly just commented on one of my videos like, "Are you the same Mayhem?" Like it's just like things like this keep happening. So hey, who knows? Maybe I'll find them.
Yeah, no. The one thing AC6 has done so well is just vets of the community and people we haven't seen in a long time, bring them out of the woodworks, and I've loved that. I mean, like, just being here, being with you guys tonight has been awesome. Yaka here taught me drop lock OB way back when. I remember we were on Kai, and he's like, so, we were always like, so you got any business designs? Like, come on, I want to show you this squad. And you were using a GNL for like the slide jump manual fire and stuff like that. And just
Yeah, it's so good, bro.
dude,
I loved it.
I'll never forget that. We played for like 4 or 5 hours that night, and there's so many people that I didn't know if I'd see again or whatnot. But yeah, being here in AC6 now and having everybody here is just amazing. So thanks for getting us together, Claire.
It's the beauty of AC6. The game is so good. Literally, people who haven't played in 15 years have come to play this game.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, so I'll add links to Yaka. I'll add links to your YouTube. Zealous obviously add links to your Twitch. Fox, I know you don't really do much in that space, but I might just encourage people to join the Cleric Discord and then just search your name and look at you waxing eloquent on certain issues and just enjoy it like I do.
I have to phrase it the way I do because it's pure vitriol. I hate that missile so much. I can imagine it making Looney Tunes sounds just in
before the Acme memes show up.
Yes.
All right, you see that. Thank you all for being on here. Thanks for being in the discussion. Thank you for your contributions, your viewpoints, your perspectives. Thank you everyone who commented on that video asking what Armored Core was to you. Actually, that got a little bigger than I was expecting. Quite a few views on that thing. And then looking forward to the next podcast that we discussed our next nuanced discussion related to Armored Core. Until then, I will see you all in the next podcast. See y'all.
So.